A very warm good morning to all of you, and a confirmation about the audio, please. If the audio is clear, thank you. Yes, Shakib, I'll take a look at it. So, hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the final session of the essay module. And in our journey for the essay sessions, which have lasted for around 5 classes, and today will be the last and the sixth class, we have managed to cover holistically the various different areas associated with the philosophical type of essays. Also, now we are taking a look at the GS based topics and how to approach these GS based topics. Many of you have started writing the essay in itself, and that in itself should be considered as an achievement nonetheless. But if you reflect back on these particular 5 to 6 modules that we have covered, overall, the effort and the endeavor has to be to increase and improve the amount of critical thinking and the level of aptitude that you can apply for any particular topic, and also the amount of diversification that you can provide for any particular topic. So here, at the end of the day, today in the session, we shall be discussing about what are the important books that you need to be referring to, what is the role played by current affairs, and what are the magazines, how you should read the newspapers, how you should extract the vocabulary, and how you should and you can improve your command over the language. And that will also be significantly helpful for you when it comes to the portion of even the GS mains answer writing. And just a moment. So that shall also help you in terms of understanding the requirement of the GS answers. And also, once you have the command over the language, then your ability to express yourself that significantly improves and improves exponentially almost. So, with that, let us take a look at few of the more focus areas from which GS topics have been asked with the help of the PYQs, with the help of also the quotations for each of these topics which you can use to enrich your answers. So that is something which we shall be focusing upon. Okay. uh Shanavas, the class has already been initiated, so kindly refresh the session and you will get an idea. So here we were talking about the portion of education. We had looked into the area of the topics arising or the quotations associated with Mahatma Gandhi, few of the quotations. And now we are into the portion of education. Uh, Ilma, that issue has been raised up. The teams are in working behind the scenes, and do one thing, give us a time of around 48 hours, and it will be resolved definitely. Okay, so have a time limit of 48 hours. If it is not resolved, if the issue is not resolved by Monday, then please send a mail again, and then it will be escalated further. Okay, but don't worry about it. This is a resolvable issue which will be resolved as soon as possible. Okay, now here, when we talk about education, here we were taking a look at the pattern of the questions which have been asked. Now, most of the questions that you see, the previous year questions which have been framed from the portion of education, almost all these questions, they actually revolve around the similar lines. So we had taken a look at the question initially that is, neglect of primary healthcare and education in India are the reasons for its backwardness. So here, the issue at hand, which needs to be highlighted, is basically what are the problems in the education system, right? Then, destiny of a nation is shaped in its classrooms. Now, this is a particular question of the essay where you have to talk about, and what is it that you can think about? Destiny of a nation is shaped in its classrooms. That means it talks about the importance of education in shaping the minds of the young ones, and also brings about the virtues of morality based education. Okay, importance of reforming education to reform the society or nation. Okay, so that is the portion that we have to highlight here. Education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make a man more clever devil. We have discussed about this. We have discussed about the importance of this particular topic, where we have discussed that how, if you have, and we have discussed it in the form of brainstorming, that in the case of when you don't have a proper education system and value based education, then regardless of how many degrees that you achieve, you won't have any particular contribution, positive contribution that you can lay upon in the society, in the world out there. And we had taken the example of the various different corruption cases. We had taken the example of even terrorist figures such as Osama bin Laden, and how they have been educated, but then it is education without values. Independent thinking should be encouraged right from the childhood. Are the standardized tests good measure for academic ability and progress? Now, this question was asked based upon the current affairs. So sometimes that also happens. You have questions based upon the topics which are at discussion, the topics which are in relevance. So when you talk about the entirety of the education system, any of these topics that you talk about, you need to be discussing and elaborating upon the education system. And their historical perspective, as we had talked about yesterday as well, historical perspective plays a key role here. Now, when we talk about the historical perspective, so earlier you had the situation of the Gurukul based system of education, which was prevalent for a long period of time. And this particular kind of education system laid attention to learning, and learning based upon the value set. So there you had a particular adherence to morality and values. But at the same time, you have to also bring to the light that how, over a period of time, that education system that we were providing, that education system continued to be dependent upon something which was very archaic, something which was not relevant to the modern world, and that persists even today. So these learning centers which we had, and we had learning centers significantly, the learning centers of Takshila, Nalanda, Vikramshila, all of these, they would attract scholars and gems from across the world. So once you have that attracting point or the melting point of those illuminated minds, then automatically the sum product will be something which will be very insightful. Then you also have the social perspective which you can provide to the education. That is, how is it that education will mold the character, right? You would have heard about the famous quotation that if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. But if character is lost, then everything is lost. So that defines the importance of character. And character is also one of those areas around which many of the keywords they do revolve. And many of these questions, they require you to stress upon the importance of development of character in general. Okay, right? Now, after that, the economic perspective. Prerna, the ongoing topic is the essay module for the focus, and we are discussing the focus areas and how to write an essay. Those are the areas that we are holding the discussion for. Okay. Then economic perspective associated with education, that how education is directly associated with the economic progress of a nation. Any nation's journey that you consider for the past 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, you will find that there is a direct correlation. When the education system is good, when the education system actually pushes you to think rather than pushing you to learn. The problem is that, and all of you would adhere to the fact, many of you have now actually gained a kind of a maturity where you can look back at your education system, the education that you would have received in your school days, and be in a position to analyze what are the flaws and the fallacies of the education system that we have, where you would see that rather than instigating a critical mindset and critical way of thinking, where you are encouraged to ponder upon a particular subject at hand, there is a significantly greater amount of stress which is laid on scoring well. If you score well, then you will be eligible for job. If you get a job, that is when you will be safe in the society. So rather than striving towards excellence, everybody strives towards a kind of mediocrity. So when that mediocrity becomes common, that is when you have a kind of a decay which happens. And that is something we witness in our country as well. Okay. Now, here we talk about the different types of education you have to elaborate. When you are talking about the education system, you have to talk about the different types. So for example, primary and secondary education, you have to talk about the problems associated with the primary and secondary education system. And when we talk about the problems associated with primary and secondary, what are the problems that comes to your mind? What are the various problems that you can think of associated with primary and secondary education? Let us list them out. And this you can say from your own experiences as well. Curriculum, language, accessibility. Okay, let's write it one by one. Accessibility, curriculum. Curriculum in the sense that it is outdated, isn't it? That is the portion I'm sure that you are talking about. Outdated curriculum. Lack of adequate infrastructure. Infra. So when you have the lack of adequate, or when you say lack of adequate infrastructure, you also have to be talking about the physical infrastructure significantly. You also have to be talking about physical infrastructure, as in you don't have enough facilities in the classrooms, you don't have enough facilities in the educational institutions. Many of the educational institutions, or rather schools, that you will come across at the primary level, at the secondary level, now they don't have the basic necessities and facilities as a toilet, for example. Even if there is a makeshift arrangement for a toilet, it is particularly demotivating for the girls to go into the school because there is no facility for them. So we are disenfranchising the girls from the very young age, and we are curbing their ability to be participating in that education system wholeheartedly. So that is the part of the physical infra. Then you have to talk about lack of teachers. Okay. The skill level. So here, the skill level of the teachers is also significantly something that many of you would have been witness to, where from your young age, now I'm not saying all of you would have been witness to it, but many of you would have been witness to it, where from the very young age, what is it that generally we have encountered, many of you would also have encountered, where the teachers would simply come into the classroom, they would ask you to open certain page in the book, they would ask you to read that particular page and section of the book, and that is how the entire learning would have happened, right? So basically in the classes also, when you are reading that or simply going through and scrolling through that pages of the book, obviously that kind of critical approach, that kind of critical mindset does not develop. So that is where you always have a kind of a practice, and which you shouldn't be surprised to find out that even amongst your competitors and even amongst the larger group that you get involved with, there also this practice persists. Even when it comes to civil services preparation, you'll find many of the candidates, they want rather the page number, tell me the page number from where to where we have to study, that is all that we are going to study. So but the problem is that when it comes to the real world application and the real world scenario, that approach doesn't work. And that is a kind of a cultural shock for many of the students out there, because they would have carried on out their studies up till class 11th or 12th following the same kind of pattern, where simply you read the book and you get the questions in the examination, you are happy go lucky, you go back home happy that okay, my work is done. But when you have to face the real world competition, any of the real world competition out there at the national level, at the international level, where you come across and you have to battle it out with the brightest of the brightest minds, that is where you have a significant amount of drawback. And that leads to many of the cases of students getting into depression, and the sad cases and the disastrous cases of student suicides. So that is also something prominently in news nowadays. So that also has to got to lay its blame on the footsteps or the doorsteps of the kind of education system that we are providing. Okay, so that is basically the aspect of the skill level. We don't have the teacher training program up till a required or designated level. You will come across many of these rural areas and the semi-urban area schools where the teachers, they it is the government school, so many of these teachers, they would have actually studied to get through the exam to be appointed as those teachers in those areas. But then if you take a look at their approach, they themselves would not be very sure about the entire world. Their level of exposure in itself would be so very low that they would never be able to paint a larger picture in front of you. For example, I'll share yesterday in geography session itself, I was significantly taken aback when I asked people about the number of oceans which are there. Now, a good majority of the people and good majority of the students, candidates, they came back to me that there are 7 oceans in the world. So these basic things, that is also not being stressed upon. So where does the fault line lie? Does the fault lie with the kind of the candidates that we have? No. It is about shaping the mindset. It is about enabling the mindset to think beyond. And for that, you need teacher training. Okay? Lack of teacher training. Large number of underqualified teacher in private schools as well. Then Ajay, refresh it and it will come. Then language issue. Yes, definitely. Now, what do we mean by language issue? So, the language issue here is quite pertinent to be observed, because in our country, and you compare it with China, and China is, in many of the cases, China is not the perfect example, and China is filled with many of the hypocrisies out there. But then, when you take a look at the education system in our country, it sometimes becomes disadvantageous if you don't know a particular language. Take the case of English. So majority of the texts, majority of the sources of learning, they are available in English. Now people who don't have that command over the language, now they are always at a set of disadvantage, right? Which is a very sad reality, that if you don't get enough materials in your own mother tongue, how is it your fault, right? So ideally the education system should be promoted in the young age, that you should have adequate supply of quality text, not some random text out there, quality text material in your own mother tongue and the language that you are comfortable with. So, be it your own native tongue, mother tongue, or any of these other languages that we have. But here, what happens is that either you know English, you don't know English. If you know English, then you will get access to all the quality books of international researchers as well. But if you don't, or if you are not good at English, then none of those research materials are there for you. So you are left short-handed. Okay. Now, then teacher pupil ratio is very less. That is very less. Okay. Then after that, co-curricular activities, holistic development is not paid attention to, right? Large number of school dropouts. Yes, Prerna, anything, teacher pupil, teacher student ratio, both of them will suffice here. And negligence on the part of the parents to send their child to school. That is why low enrollment ratio. But now the enrollment ratio has increased. So there is still some scope of improvement in the case of the enrollment ratio, but it is the adherence to the education, right? So you will find that because of the various different schemes by the different state governments, by the national central government as well, the enrollment ratio is coming back, and it is hovering in the region of the 90s for 90s in terms of the various different age groups. But it is the dropout rate. Many of them are not continuing. Why is it that people don't continue with the education system? That is because you will carry out the education as long as you have faith and belief that it will make you a better person, right? Only then will you find a kind of a poor household putting everything at stake and still sending their child to school. Why? Because at the end of the day, they should see a kind of a ray of hope that it will make you a better person. A lack of visibility of that whether indeed you will become a better person or not, that is where you will find that disenfranchisement starts happening. Loopholes in program execution. Nutritious midday meal is not provided, due to which student attendance is low. So, but here I would argue that in many of the areas, you will observe that only the candidates or the students, they come to the school with their plates and the tiffin box to get the midday meal, and then they go back home. That is the only purpose to come to school. But yes, the quality of nutrition that is provided, that is also significantly lacking and found wanting. Okay. Education is expensive in private school, so that will come under the portion of accessibility. Overtly expensive. If you go for a quality education, see, by the way, if you ever inquire about the education and the universities that you have, let's say in United States or Europe, now there also it is not as if the education is cheap. there also education is very, very costly. But then, in fact, if you, let's suppose, if you want, after a couple of years, if you want to go into and enroll yourself into Harvard Business School or something of that category, Yale or Oxford or Cambridge, you'll find it is very, very expensive. The tune of that education degree in itself will cost you somewhere around a couple of crores out there. But there, the difference is that you have enough number of scholarships and grants that will allow you to pursue the education system. Okay, so lack of funding can be cited. Then, Snelata, rather than talking about the tax is very high on education, just talk about the funding is required. Otherwise, in the taxation structure that you would have studied in economics, you also have the education cess, which is charged. Overburden of teachers in the government school for election duty, voter list, etc. Yes. Low standards in government school, correct. Then, many unauthorized private schools are opening near government schools also. There also it impacts the enrollment of children in government schools. But then imagine, so you will have certain government schools out there, for example, the Kendriya Vidyalayas in the region of Delhi. Now, these are pure government. You have the government schools in Tamil Nadu, take their example. Now, there, the level of education, I'm not saying it is the best in the world, but as compared to the average that we see across the entirety of the country, the pedigree of education which is provided is very, very significant. No accountability of syllabus completion. Yes, syllabus of government school is nothing but time pass in many states such as UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, etc. Yes, disenfranchisement of the girl child, right? Disenfranchisement of the girl child, lack of female participation, right? Number of school days, issue of Anganwadi. Uh, that is good, Yashpal. Very good. Lack of accountability of the teachers. In the case of the government school, you will find that once they get enrolled in or once they qualify to have themselves employed under the government school and the government system, then you will find that the teachers, they don't even come to school, right? And there, the practices, many of you would be aware, any of you who have received education in a government school, you would be aware that the practice is that all the teachers, they keep a kind of a ready-made leave application in the office, that whenever inspection happens, there they will show the leave application that actually I am on leave. But otherwise they don't even show up, and that is where they conduct a large number of tuition classes. So there is a kind of um, a, a diversion in terms of the learning. So you are encouraging people not to come to your classes in the school, but you are encouraging the same people to come to your homes or the tuition centers, pay you large sums of money, and then you will award them marks. So there is a kind of a punitive action in many of the cases involved as well. You would have also come across that XYZ teacher is there. If you don't take classes from that teacher never gives you good marks in the examination. So these factors come why? Because the pay structure for the teachers is also abysmally low, right? So here the payout is very, very low. Pay structure. Then lack of regulation and inspection, lack of monitoring. Okay. Yes, lack of moral education will be a part of that. So, lack of value based education. Okay. Personnel, they themselves are uneducated. Yes, perfect. Snehilata, it is the evening batch of geography which is going on, and it is about to end in next week. So you can take a new batch if you want. It will start sometime in the month of September. Civic sense education, no scope for character training, and low learning outcomes. Very good. Low learning outcomes. So low learning outcomes. Then, in the case of higher education, in that also you will find many things which are left wanting. For example, in the case of higher education, there is a complete lack of specialization that we have. So, we always go for a kind of a generalized education system, right? For example, take the case of the humanities or arts. Now, humanities and arts, what is being taught and what is its relevance? Ideally, why is it that humanities as a branch is important? Many of you, I know you come from the humanities background. What is the relevance or the importance of humanities as a stream of education? What do you think? Political system of India. Okay. No, I'm asking about the relevance of humanities in terms of why is it that humanity should be promoted? It is a life science, good. Enhances general knowledge. Okay. Humility drives system from society to global level, creates human values, gives perspectives of life. Okay. 3 to 4 subject is important in arts, rest is useless. Develops public participation, helps you understand the society, and also humanities across the world is research based across the world, and you are rewarded for that research. You are rewarded for that uniqueness. So it allows you to bring out the inner creativity. Think about it. If, let's say, I tell you that this is the exact pattern in which you have to write the answer, this is the exact pattern in which the paragraph should be there, this is how the next paragraph, exactly that is how the modus operandi should be, obviously your creativity will never come out. You will try to copy paste the template from some area to another. In other parts of the world, you will find that there are large number of Egyptologists who specialize in studying about the Egyptian civilization. Large number of people who will specialize in the history of Southeast Asia. Now, in a particular region, such as India, the subcontinent, which in itself is an encyclopedia for sociology, which in itself, sociology in the sense that the social structures and hierarchies that we see in our country, you won't find it anywhere else in the world. But then, why is it that you study sociology? You will study that in order to understand also what are the lacunae. And there, the administration can always take the help of these researchers to bring forward policies which can bring a betterment to the society. But there is an absolute disconnect between the researchers carried out and the policy making process. Right? So, as a result of that, what happens? If you study humanities, basically you are not very relevant other than to find yourself a teaching job or a teaching role somewhere. You don't have much of a relevance out there, do you? So that is where the lack of specialization in the humanities in particular is hurting us. And be it the subjects of history. Now think about it. In our country, each of the smaller districts and sub districts, they have their own very unique form of history. They have their own very unique form of how the cultural milieu there has shaped up. What are the basis on which the tradition is shaped up? But then we don't pay attention to the researchers. So here, lack of research. lack of research. In my college for history classes, staffs take their own life history. Okay. When I tell people that I am humanities student, they think that I'm not good in study. That is the case. That is the general perception. And the perception that has been built up in the society is what? And all of us are part of the same society. So the general perception is, if you are good in studies, you will pick science. Otherwise, you are pushed towards humanity. But that is only because of the economic output that we relate to education. Sadly, that is the reality. That is why in India, for the past few decades, the situation is that everywhere, even if you throw a stone up in the air, it will fall on some or the other engineer out there. We have a like a mushroom growth of engineering colleges, technical education. Not all of them get relevant jobs, and not all of them they gain sufficient amount of knowledge even in the branches that they are studying. But if you are an engineer, you will find a job. But in the case of the humanities, that is lacking. Why? Because there is a lack of that connect. Think about it. If you study, let's suppose, a particular stream of humanity in general, let's take the case of sociology in itself, your understanding of the social structures increases, your understanding of the society increases. And you, once you are able to put that to use, that will be of significant help to understand the consumer behavior as well. That will be of significant help to understand how materialism is something which is prevalent in certain sections of the society, but it is not in other areas. And that can be put to use by many of the industries, and more importantly, by the government as well. So, a lack of capacity at those levels, that has basically reduced the portion of humanities and given it, sadly, a kind of a nuisance value. And the education institutions that we have, they also don't do justice to it, right? The educational institutions where you go for that learning of that humanities subject, there also you will find that the quality and the most relevant and the modern day works in humanities, you are not even exposed to that. After you come out of that course, and then if you start researching on your own, only then, if you are let's say pursuing a PhD or a degree like that, only then will you realize that what you have been taught is not even relevant, and there have been much more researches which have been carried out. So that is where there is a disconnect. Okay. Now, let's suppose I study history, sociology, summer paths, then will I get job in corporate in any form? So there are some corporates which are coming towards the areas of humanity, right? And I have many such examples where uh, I have seen some of my brightest colleagues out there. Obviously, I can't take their names. Some of the brightest colleagues out there who did not choose science, they chose humanity, and they are excelling in life. Obviously, in order to excel in the form of education, they had to go to other universities abroad in order to make themselves relevant in the modern world. And yes, they did land a good job in the corporate sector. That is what they desired. Many of them are part time researchers. Many of them have established their own NGOs. Many of them are influencing policy making at a smaller level. But then the scope of humanities is there to be expanded. The Hindu newspaper had come out with a series of these editorials where it talks about how humanities is important in shaping up the nation, shaping up the morality, because from the technical education, you don't learn from the past. In the case of the humanities, you get a chance to learn from the past, rectify your mistakes, and understand the past in greater detail. So that is why I always tell you to stress upon these editorials. Okay. Then we get syllabus and books 1 week before the exams, only focus on maths. And there also you will find the pattern that many of them, they hand out to you the question papers themselves so that you are able to get good marks, and it reflects good on the teachers as well. So that is where that aspect and that entire behavior of shortcut that comes into the picture, right? And in rural sector, teachers instead or to taught by themselves, they hire some local people to teach. Yes, obviously, because then the teachers will go to and establish their own tuition centers. They will be earning in huge sums of money, and they will make a good life out of them, right? Now, yes, Shanavaz, I know. So, as I told you, we are all a product of the same society. So, that is why I want you to bring forward your experience when you are writing a particular topic about the issue in the higher or primary sector of education. Now, once we have talked about this portion of humanities and its relevance, which is not significantly developed in our country, even when we talk about the STEM courses, that is science, engineering, maths, and technical education that you have. Now, even in the STEM courses that we have, there is a complete lack of research. When was the last time that you came across a path breaking discovery happening from our country or from any of our labs? Never. When was the last time that you heard that one of our premier institutions, for which people actually end their lives if they don't get an opportunity to get into these premier institutions? Many of them, they take their own lives, right? But when is it that the last time that you encountered that one of these premier institutions, they have come across with a technology that the entire world is actually astounded with? Recently, China, that is last week, China came up with the technology of laser tech, where they can keep on firing the lasers endlessly. Now think about it. These modern tech, which comes, whichever country develops those innovative measures, the developmental progress automatically will be laid in front of them. And we are becoming a kind of an education system where all these various different even the engineering college, you will find they keep on filing and they keep on basically listing that we have these many journals that have been published, these many patents that have been filed, but the patents granted are absolutely minimalistic, right? Because majority of them are cut, copy pasted from somewhere else. And the lack of information by the at the side of the teachers and the faculty as well, that further exaggerates to the problem. Take a look at the region of United States. Regardless of all the ills and the various issues that you can point a finger at in the case of United States, you will have to agree that the education system is still amongst the best in the world. Now, there in the institutions, who are the members of that? Some of the brightest minds of the world, the Nobel laureates, right, who have won the Nobel Prize for physics, mathematics, chemistry, etc. Now, why do they become a part of that? That is where they are able to carry out significant amount of research. So we have a complete lack of research based education. In fact, you would have come across the recent submission by DOPT, and rather a recommendation by a parliamentary committee, that even in civil services, you have an extraordinary proportion of people coming from the IITs, right? And they are hogging up all the seats. But then these IITs, they are not, they have not been established. These IITs have not been established to as a graduation course, so that after that you pursue your education, after that you completely change your field and you go for civil services and enter into bureaucracy. While that can be encouraged, but that should not be the major motivation out there. IITs, they were the premier research institutions. They were established as the premier research institutions. IITs were supposed to be the pinnacle of research. IITs were not meant to be that who lands up with the highest package of job. IITs were never meant for that. That if you go through the, now sadly, what is the perception? Get to the IIT, your life is set. Because now you will get a good job with a very high package and your life is set. Then you do your MBA, again another high package, and then your life is set. But that is not what the IITs were for. You don't have any research institutions, complete research based institutions. So that is where immediately after independence, you had stalwarts such as Homi Bhabha, you had stalwarts such as Vikram Sarabhai. They themselves pioneered many of these research institutions. And that is where the mindset of research that comes in, that has produced geniuses such as APJ Abdul Kalam. So that ecosystem needs to persist, that ecosystem needs to prevail. Okay, so here a complete lack of research, and here you also have to highlight bias in the grading system, concentration of institutions in certain regions only. That comes with accessibility because of objective entrance exam for teachers. Qualification led to mugging up and narrow knowledge. Yes, right. And research needs time and resources. More importantly, research needs support. More than time and resources, research needs support. Without support, nobody will carry out a research. Right. So imagine if Albert Einstein, or if recently released movie of Oppenheimer, many of you would have seen that. Now imagine any of these luminaries. Now let's suppose they were not paid for their research, and during their research work they had no money to earn. How many of them would be encouraged to carry out the research further? After all, nobody carries out research as a point of virtue, that I am a virtuous person, I am a virtuous individual, so I'll carry out research. What has China done for the past decade and a half? And more than that, China has almost started writing blank checks to the researchers, to the people, its own people who have gone abroad, that come back to our country, carry out the research, whatever money you want, we will give it to you. And that comes, where will they carry out the research? At the universities. So that requires infrastructure at the level of the universities as well, isn't it? So that is basically the lack of STEM courses. And even in STEM courses, you have lack of relevance, relevance in modern world. Okay, lack of relevance in the modern world, in the sense that many of you would have, let's suppose, carried out your engineering studies, and you would have come across the fact that what is being taught in our classrooms in these engineering colleges and institutions, they are not at all applicable in the real world. They are teaching us the technology which was relevant in the late 70s and the early 80s. The technology has moved significantly forward, right? The technology is nowhere at that level, right? For example, I'll take any of these courses. Let's suppose a branch of mechanical engineering, or let's suppose electrical engineering. Now, in the case of electrical engineering, if you take a look at the contemporary universities of the world, they will never only teach you electrical engineering, because nowhere is the relevance for the engineers only about connecting the wires anymore and understanding the generators anymore. Electrical engineering is taught along with computer sciences, so that you can develop the simulation softwares, you can understand it better, and that is what is applied. Now, people read these courses, they apply for the exams. You have examinations such as GATE, etc. Right? I hope you are aware of that. You get through that after rigorous amount of hard work. I always believe that landing a good rank in GATE is much more harder than succeeding in the mains examination of civil services. So, in the case of civil services, you still have scope for creativity. But in these technical examinations such as IES, Indian Engineering Services, or GATE, the scope of creativity is almost absent. If you know it, or you don't know it. Now people rectify it, mug it up, and to land up a job where? In the NTPCs of the world, right? Ever if you have been to any of these power plants, I encourage you to visit sometimes if they give you the opportunity. Visit them sometimes. You will find very modern machineries kept in the control rooms, etc. And there will be the odd government employee sitting in front of them, simply staring at the monitors and the screens. Now, they have cleared these examinations and then they have reached there. But for many of them, you will find that their knowledge is restricted to the fact that if the red light starts blinking, I have to press this. If the green light is on, everything is safe. If the red light blinks multiple times or is continuous, I have to call my boss. That is their job. Now, where does that equipment come from? That equipment is manufactured in Germany. Siemens manufactures it, sends it to us. We simply install it. We sit and we stare at that. So, even if there is a malfunction, our engineers are not capable to rectify that in many of the cases. They don't even have a clue what is going wrong. So, there are long term power outages, and unless and until some technician from, let's say, those companies they will visit, there is a kind of a complete power shutdown. So, what does that tell you? That whatever is being taught, whatever is being asked, is that relevant in the modern world? Absolutely not. Right? So, that is where lack of relevance. Then, here also, lack of female participation. Yes, even though it does not come into the area, but Mrityunjay, I agree with you. The kind of paper that was set for CSAT this year, how is that relevant anymore? Because here you are selecting people for civil services. Obviously, you want them to be intelligent, you want them to be able to apply the logic. But then there is no point of setting the CSAT paper to the level of CAT, right? The CAT examinations which you use for getting the management degree or MBA degree. The CSAT paper in itself this year and for the past few years, it has been morphing itself into the area where that is becoming a disqualifying section. That it doesn't matter anymore if I have a good information or a good source of information about the areas concerned with the country and the areas that UPSC is asking me to do. Here, now it is the entire examination of print. That is one of the reasons why this year, if you ask any of your seniors, now there are many of the candidates that I am in touch with who have entered into the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration this year. Now they will tell you that this year Labasna has witnessed a kind of a historical rise in the amount of people who are going there for training. Every year there would be 400, 420, 450 students or 450 candidates who would finally go to Labasna. Rest of them would drop out to attempt another year to improve their ranks. But this year Labasna is witnessing more than 550 and around 500 to 550 candidates enrolling there because they don't want to take the risk anymore, because the type of pattern that UPSC prelims is morphing into, it is now significantly unpredictable. So that is where it is becoming irrelevant. Then the issues and also the opportunities, we'll talk about what are the opportunities which you can highlight. Now, then vocational. Now we have a complete disregard for vocational education and vocational training. Vocational training means a skill level development or a specialization in any particular area. Not everybody wants to be an engineer. Not everybody wants to be a doctor. Many of them, they urgently require some money to earn. And the only way to earn that is if they have a specialization in something. Otherwise, many people are forced into the low skill jobs. They are pushed into areas where they are pursuing low skill level jobs. So that is not relevant in the modern world. Now, in any of the developed nations that you find, the number of engineers is not very high, but the number of skilled professionals is very, very high. But we don't provide that skill training, the ITIs that we have, industrial training institutes. I'm sure many of you would be aware of. Even today, I can tell you with a significant degree of guarantee that a person holding a diploma from an ITI will have more practical knowledge than an engineer coming out from a prestigious university out there in our country. They are taught about the real world application, but then their utilization is very less. Now, the industry to institute connect, that is lacking massively. What the industry needs, the institution does not know or is not ready to provide. So, what will the industry do? It will get people from somewhere else. right? So that is where we have a complete lack of industry institution connect. Industry institute connect. Now, that is completely lacking. Okay, so that is why you have many of the industry leaders, such as Anand Mahindra, has also went on record to say that almost 90 to 95% of our graduates, they are unemployable because they have simply gotten the degree. They don't know any nitty gritties out there. So that is the problem that you have to be very mindful of. You have to highlight that if you want to encourage the amount of jobs that you have in the market, you need to provide that vocational education, let's say after class 10th, and then you allow the people to carry out their studies after some time as well. In our country, the approach of learning, as we were talking about yesterday, is also something which is bogging us down, where learning is sought to be done up till around 21, 22. You do all the education that you want. After that, either go for post graduation or get married, settle down in your life, and your life is set. That is one of the reasons. And this is a kind of an interesting study which was carried out by Sanjeev Sayal. You would have heard about Sanjeev Sayal, who is right now a part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Committee. Now, Sanjeev Sayal had carried out a very interesting research where he showed that the institutions and the universities for education that we have in India, where are they located? All of them are located far away in the from the outskirts of the city, very far away from the outskirts of the city. So what does that tell you? That gain education, come back to real life. Education and real life cannot go simultaneously. Whereas take a look at the Cambridges and the Oxfords of the world. Now they are situated bam in the middle of the city. Carry out your work life, carry out your upskilling process. So that upskilling is frowned upon. The stream that you choose at the level, at the age of at the age of 15 or 14 or 16, that is it for your entirety of life. If, let's suppose, for the class 11th and 12th, I have chosen, let's suppose, science, and I want to actually pursue humanities, there is very limited option for me, isn't it? And vice versa also holds true. So this is where vocational education can provide upskilling for the masses, can provide jobs for the masses, and all those people who are pushed into these institutions just to get relevant jobs. And many people don't have the requirement of research. Fair enough. They require a job. So for that job, do you actually need an engineering degree out there? So that is where vocational education needs to be promoted. It is apt for a large population. This is where China is doing particularly well for the last 20, 30 years almost. The vocational skill training that it is providing is simply stupendous. And that is where you will find that they are training the people in augmented reality, virtual reality from a very young age. In our system of education, there is no scope of providing that. Why? In almost whichever state that you belong from, look at who holds the education portfolio. Now, in majority of these areas, you will find that education system is not paid significant attention to, right? So that is where we need a significant funding, institute connect, industry connect, and research being put into the portion of education. Okay, now the industrialists are allowed to teach in the institute, not much, no. So problems associated, commercialization, rote learning is promoted. There's a significant lack of ethics. Okay. And yes, Abhishek, you can. And then after that, you'll find shortage of teachers. Here you will also talk about the aspect of quality, absolute number, then skilling, All these lack of infrastructure, we have talked about what kinds of infrastructure, learning periods and outcomes. Okay, then there are certain things which are nonetheless working for us, and these provide us with the significant opportunity. So as I always tell you, you have to be able to look at both sides of the picture. So the opportunities, so the opportunities are immense. For example, we have many different varied areas of learning. We don't have all the areas of learning restricted to some places, even though they are largely restricted around metropolitan cities. There is a greater need for establishment of more of these institutes of prominence, institutes of excellence. But still, there is a kind of a decentralized learning. And we are still a value based society. We are still a society which values education. You will find that even if you go to a rural area, a rural household, somebody who has got a degree, master's degree, PhD degree, you will find that even if they are not doing or having any job, they will still have respect. Why? Because that person is educated. So that is why education is valued in our country. So that will automatically push the future generation towards the path of inculcating education. We just need to reform the sector significantly. And reform happens gradually, right? Reform does happen very gradually. Okay. Now, then after that, opportunity for employment needs to be provided, and that is where we can take the advantage of the demography. We have one of the largest number of people in the youthful age and in the working age of the population. It is now is the opportune time to utilize their talents. Otherwise, it once this time is wasted, then we will have a large scale or a large army of unemployed individuals, and that unemployment is something which is going to haunt us going ahead into the future. So what we do need is, as the various different state and the central governments have also been talking about, we need job creators. We need job creators, right? We have an extraordinary dependence on the government sector jobs. And why is that? Because of the sense of security, that the government job, if you get government job, you will be secure for life. Even if you don't go, they will never push you out. So that is where you need more job creators rather than job seekers out there. Uniformity is something which can be helpful. Now, what are the data pointers that you have to keep in mind? How much percentage of GDP spends on education and R&D in India compared to the world? Yes. For example, in R&D, we are spending significantly less, or less than 1% of our GDP we are spending in R&D. Whereas the contemporary, or take the case of South Korea, they are investing close to around 4% of their GDP. Israel is spending 4% of GDP on R&D. Similarly, in the case of education, our spending is around 2%. It needs to be somewhere to the tune of 6%. So there is a huge scope. Okay. Now, these are the data pointers that you have to keep in mind. First is the literacy rate. Now, I understand many of you are going to appear for the examination next year, and many of you are going to appear for the examination after that year as well. So, when the latest census data comes, it will come after 2024, obviously. So, whenever that latest census data comes, that is when you have to stick to the latest data pointers. Always keep track of the current affairs in this. Relevant current affairs. Bhardwaj, decentralized learning means that we don't have one particular center where all the educational institutions are situated. You will generally find people from various states, barring a few, they find opportunities to study in their own region. So that automatically will create many good examples that in my region, this person has studied in this institute, has done good for himself or herself. So I will also be encouraged. Many times the inhibitions come that I have to migrate to another part of the country for a significantly longer duration of my life. That is where people don't go there. So that is the decentralized learning which will help. Okay, can we show the trend of rates? Absolutely, yes. Then this literacy rate, then teacher to student ratio, demography, the demographic dividend. Yes, Abhishek, perfect. Then you have the Pratham and the Acer reports, which gives you an idea about learning outcomes and the learning outcomes which are coming out. That is absolutely abysmal. That is absolutely something which is very dangerous for the future as well, where it has been found that a basic mathematical problem of multiplication, division, etc., that a standard two or a standard third child should be able to do. Now you have students in class 8th and ninth who are not able to do that, who are not able to comprehend that. So that is where the learning outcomes are decreasing drastically day by day. And that is something which is a sum product of our various different initiatives that we have taken, the educational initiatives or the lack of initiatives that we have basically embarked upon. Okay, online education and even some free schemes for competitive exams. Yes, yes, Akula. Now, so few additional pointers to keep in mind: demographic dividend to demographic disaster in the lack of employment, lack of employment. Yes, Manoj, even that no detention policy that we have. Now, no detention policy means that you have many candidates who come up to the level of class 12th, and they do not even appear for examination even once. Now, I understand that those who are interested will study nonetheless. But how many students out of a 45 student class, how many of them are actually interested to study for the sake of studying? Maybe four, five out of them, right? Others, they study just to get through the examination, secure good marks in the examination, and that is their incentive to open the book. That is why you'll find the learning outcomes have been reducing quite substantially. You don't have to open the book. If you open the book or not, you will go to the next level, right? You will go to the next class in itself. So, holistic, either bring out a holistic level of education where you are taught with life skills. Go to any of the international schools abroad. In the international schools abroad, you are taught about teamwork, at a very young age. I'm talking about the kindergarten age. You are taught about what is teamwork. You are taught about the co-curricular activities, and slowly and steadily you are taught about the stories, and then you are taught how to read, how to write. So it comes naturally. Here, what is the case? A young child is there, you immediately teach them that how to write a cursive A, B, C, D, and so on. If you are good in that, good marks. Otherwise, now that person doesn't even know at that point of stage that where will I use these, and we judge the candidates based upon that. So that is where you have to be understood. Demography is the qualitative aspect of population. Okay, now the possibilities. What are the possibilities? So possibilities and opportunities are significant. So for that you need reforms, so that can be provided in the form of way forward as well. Way forward. What is the way forward? That is understanding rather than learning, right? Relevance to the outside world. Okay, encouragement, provision of quality sources of information in modern, in vernacular language, regular teacher training, and this should be made conditional in the sense that if you, even for the teachers, why is it so that only the students are supposed to keep learning? Why isn't it the case that even it is made mandatory for the teachers to learn as well? Right? Why isn't it the case that the teachers, once they have come to the school or the institutions, then they are relaxed that whatever I have studied 10 years back, I will earn my livelihood throughout my life only based upon those? Why is it so? Even their promotion, even their levels of pay, etc., that should be made conditional to periodic checks, examinations, etc. That is something which should be made mandatory. And also, basically, interaction and connect, cultural connect across the country. We should actually have a system where a, an individual, let's suppose from Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, they are encouraged to learn, let's suppose, a language such as Malayalam, a language such as Tamil, a language such as Kannada, and the vice versa should also be there, right? So that you understand the culture better. Once you understand the culture better, automatically that portion of humanities which we have oftentimes ignored, that also will come into, because many of the great literary, and when I say great, great is something which is one of the most frequently used terms nowadays. Everybody we call as great. So one of those very significant, many of those significantly great literary works, they are available in regional language, right? That is not available for the masses. For example, take the case of Tirukural, one of the best works out there, but then it is not available for understanding for the general masses. Take the case of works of Premchand. Now, in the case of the works of Premchand, if you are good in Hindi, you will be able to understand that. Otherwise, you won't have much clue about that. So there is a disenfranchisement which has been done. And this is partly as a result of the British rule, and we cannot close our eyes to that. But then that is something that we can improve going ahead into the future. Okay. Now, then increase digitization, digitization, then industry institute connect, connect, then role of online education. So apprenticeship programs, yes. Role of online learning. Online learning will bring what? Will bring inclusivity. Inclusivity. You don't necessarily have to travel far and wide in order to get access to quality education. So that accessibility will be provided. Greater spend on research, Execution of the government schemes. Government, Abhishek, that is also a good point, that many of these government schemes, they are there in place, but they are not executed properly. So proper execution and monitoring of schemes. Then after that, gender equity is one of those, again, way forward. Then you also have the partnership with institutes abroad in designing the curriculum. Okay, linking research and policy making, yes, and better pay for the teachers, because that is not something, uh, being a teacher eventually is not considered to be a good pay job, and that is something that not many people vie for when it comes to the government run institutes out there. So pay structure also needs to be worked upon. And then comes the role of infrastructure. Even though infrastructure overall is improving across the country, and this is independent of the region of the country that we are talking about, generally you will find that infrastructure, for other than a few laggard areas, and that will always persist in a very large country like India, you cannot have a sudden upliftment of every place. So in majority of the places, you will find that now the conditions of the primary centers of education, the secondary centers of education, there the sufficient adequate amount of infrastructure is provided. For example, if you ever get an opportunity to take a look at the schools in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, in even in Maharashtra, certain portions, in Gujarat, in certain portions. Now, there you will find that the basic facilities, they are not only provided, but also the quality is being provided significantly. So there the infrastructure is developing across the country. Even Delhi, for that matter, infrastructure is increasing. But that infrastructure is a uniform thing that will come with the development of the country. When you have greater availability of finances, all the various, and Tamil Nadu, always I will cite an example, because if you get an opportunity to look into that, Tamil Nadu has been working upon its education system for decades now. Earlier, you had Kerala, which worked upon that. And that is where the level of primary and secondary education provided is significantly helpful. Once that is worked upon, then automatically relevance to the modern day world comes into play. Okay? Yes, Neelata. Need to include modern education even in the religious institutions. Yes. Ajay, what is your question, my dear friend? Commercialization, Hariom, in education, commercialization refers to when you have to shell, there it is very costly, and it becomes a kind of a commodification of sorts. Sometimes, in very rare cases, Mrityunjay, you have the case of center state conflict coming into this, but otherwise, you don't have that. You don't have that issue. See, Tamil Nadu is working upon its own education system, Karnataka is working upon its own education system, and Kerala has developed its own education system. So, it is something. Yes, Neha, I can see your message. Can we write industry academia integration as a solution? Yes, you can. And Ajay, but online cost of courses is very high in some of the online edtechs. So, but some other give at lowest price at the same content. Then how comes inclusivity? So it is not about the price point. Think about it. What you are saying is that the same content is also given at a very low price. So let's suppose someone who doesn't have an access, and if they want the same content, why will they pay higher price? So it is about the inclusivity. Here talks about what? Inclusivity here talks about that where is it able to reach? with the help of VSAT models, that is virtual satellite models, etc., where you are able to hold a online session for someone sitting in the hinterland of the country. With the greater penetration of internet, that has been made possible, right? So inclusivity here talks about the accessibility. Many of them do not have access, many of them don't have the facility to go to a nearby urban areas, right? So that price point is, but if you are very certain that basically the availability of content is the same and everywhere the quality is same, why will you spend higher amount of money? So that is where inclusivity will always come in. I hope you are able to look at the larger picture here, Ajay. Okay. Now, we also have the Abhyudaya Yojana, yes. So various different state governments are running these schemes out there. Okay. Uh, Except for Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Tripura, other states have seen an increase in the enrollment of children in the tuition classes. Yes. So that tells you about the education system. In Finland, uh, no exam happens until higher level and their IQ is greater than us. So, see, Finland is a different case scenario. Finland, they don't have to face the same level of competition that we are pushed into. They are a kind of a little amount of, so there you will find greater number of people going for vocational training. They don't have an ambition that I have. Many of them, they don't have the aspiration or ambition that unless and until I become the CEO of a company, my life is worthless. So there is a happiness quotient coming there. So once the happiness, so that is something you find in the Nordic nations with lesser population. You are happy to live a kind of a peaceful, meaningful life. Here there is a kind of, so that is a very much a part of the Asian culture in general, right? So be it Vietnam, be it China, be it South Korea, if ever you get an opportunity to visit South Korea, you would be very significantly surprised by the amount of work that they put in. So till now you would have heard that how meticulous workers Japanese are. Japanese basically, they don't leave any stone unturned to put in the hard work. They put in long, long hours in office. But South Koreans, they call Japanese as their lazy neighbors. Because when you are in South Korea, be it in the school system, be it when you are working, so there you go into the office as early as 6 to 7 in the morning, and you get an exit as late as 10 or 11 at night. Now, that is a part of very much a kind of a civilization cultural ethos that you will find in the Asian societies. That is very different from the region of the Nordic nation. So you have to understand what is referred to as regionalization and areal differentiation in the portion of geography. So I won't take you into that aspect, but it is when you take a look at the larger picture, the culture is a bit different. Here, how many of your parents will be satisfied if you find a job as a car mechanic? Ask yourself. How many of your parents will be very satisfied and proud that my child finally has landed a job as a car mechanic? So he knows every details about the car. He can actually rectify the car, any kind of issues in the car, and that is his or her profession. Very little, very few, right? But in those countries, that is a respectable profession. Here, how many of the parents would be very happy and satisfied that my kid has landed a job in a McDonald's or a KFC out there? Very handful. But there you have that as a meaningful, that is counted as a job, that is counted as a job creation, right? Here, people don't even tell that. Here, people hide that. So that is where you have to understand those differences. Okay. Yes, exactly. They will all tell you that the entire money is wasted, right? So that is where you have to understand the difference, and they will be banging their heads that what is the sin that I did that my child has eventually become or followed or pursued these professions. So we cannot have we cannot have that model of Finland implemented in India with the mindset that we have in India. If the mindset would have been different, then you wouldn't have the sad scenario where a person having a master's degree and a PhD degree is applying for a grade D job just because it is a government job. It will just give you around 20 to 25,000, but you know that you have the grade D job, that is the government sector, you have the scope to make crores of money. So if you go to many of the rural areas, you will still find the case that a person working in Microsoft or Google, that person might be earning in crores, but another one, or his or her, let's suppose brother or a sister, if they are in a government sector job only earning 15,000 or 20,000, the second person is given more respect. So we cannot have the same scenario without understanding the cultural milieu of our country. Okay, right, like MBA chai wala that you have. Yes. So I hope you understand that, Sneha, that why we cannot have the exact Finland model implemented here. So the few quotations that you can always associate with the portion of education. So here, basically, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. That is by Ben Franklin. Then education is the premise of progress in every society, in every family. It is the premise of progress. Which progress? Social, economic, all these progress that we talk about. Roots of education are better, but the fruits are sweet, by Aristotle. You can use that. Live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. We have talked about this in the case of Mahatma Gandhi. And then educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So this again is value based education. Then education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make a man a more clever devil. We have already discussed about this, and this is a question that UPSC had asked as well. And yes, Nayalata, that is the issue with why we don't have gender equity in the case of education system, because in our education system and in our society as well, women, they are always expected to play a role, and that role is predefined for them. And Ajay, Bihar spends money more on education than other states. Example to girl, 25K at 12, 50K at graduation, also construction in 38 engineering and medical colleges, in one in each district. So whatever information that you are putting here, student credit card system giving loans to 4 lakh to study. So Ajay, all I would say here is that whatever information that you are putting here, remember that when the time comes at the interview panel, the interview board talk about those particular things, the interview board will have a greater respect for you. So, anyways, for the interview panel, you need to remember the government schemes. So, use that as a kind of a way forward. Okay. I'm just saying whichever government scheme that you are remembering. I'm not saying that remember the portion of Bihar, don't remember the other portion. Any of the government schemes that you learn, any of the governments. Now, I just told it because he is very, very particular about how much sum at each of the age level and which of the engineering and medical colleges and all of those. So you appear to be very well versed with the government scheme for education in Bihar. Fair enough. Use that as a way forward. What can be done, and what is being done, and use that in the interview process as well. I'm not going to stand here and comment whether what a particular state government is doing is good or bad. I'm not going to indulge in those petty issues. I am here to tell you to look at the larger picture. And this is where you have to differentiate yourself from the 9 p.m. news story that you see on the television sets. You don't have to be one of those 9 p.m. news stories where you have a particular biasness towards a particular aspect. Don't do that. Always try to take a look at the larger picture. That is the education system in our country bad? Yes or no? If yes, what needs to be done to improve that. Tomorrow you might be selected as an IAS officer. You might be posted, let's suppose, in Gujarat or Rajasthan or Maharashtra. There, what will you do with all those kind of personal biases that you develop? So the purpose of all India services is to take a look at the larger picture. Okay, I hope I am able to convey what I am trying to get at. Okay, now the portion of women. Now, women also is one of those areas from where UPSC has been asking question. So, as I told you yesterday as well, when we were talking about conflict resolution, that if women ruled the world, right? So if women ruled the world, so this was asked in 2005. So this basically at that point of time there were, that is why humanities is so very important and relevant, because at that point of time many of the researchers did indicate that a greater amount of female participation in the workforce reduced the amount of conflicts which are generated and leads to better conflict resolution. So that is where it talks about a kind of a world where the conflicts are less. Women's reservation bill would usher in empowerment for women in India. Now, that is not always true. That is something which oftentimes is held to ransom, right? So you have to explore that. Managing work and home, is the Indian working woman getting a fair deal? So observe this. What is it that UPSC is harping upon? Observe the trend here, guys. Don't get bogged down by one or the two small words here. So what is the trend? Trend is the issues faced by women. And what do we mean by women empowerment here? Okay. And what is the role to be played? So, women, they are always expected to play a dual role where they are supposed to not only significantly improve or significantly provide the aspect of workmanship, but also they are supposed to be the caretakers of the household. So that is where the issue starts to prevail. Okay, so managing work and home, is the Indian working woman getting a fair deal? So is, if development is not engendered, it is endangered. We have discussed about this in detail. Usher means to bring in, right? Usher, to bring in. Okay, so fulfillment of new woman in India is a myth. So what do we understand by new woman? So that is a definition that was being asked upon. So again, regardless of whether a girl, let's suppose, excels in her school days, excels in her university days, excels, or even if let's suppose she performs above than average, higher than average, she becomes a doctor, she becomes an engineer, she becomes an IS officer, she becomes a professor, a lecturer, anything. But still, she is supposed to carry out the work of a homemaker. She is supposed to go back home and take care of everyone. The same expectation is not held out for any male child out there, right? So that is why from the very young age, the upbringing is substantially different. And that is one of the impediments, that is setting the limitations, that whatever you do, you have to be within these limitations. So if that is ingrained upon you right from the day that you have started speaking and you have started understanding words, this is the idea that is ingrained upon you. This is the idea that you see around you in the society, in your household, you see that same thing. Obviously, the amount that you will dream up to, that will also be significantly limited, isn't it? You won't be encouraged to dream significantly more. So that is where your entire achievement will be very much limited. Okay. So that is basically about women empowerment. Here you can talk about the historical perspective. Please tell, how will the portion of managing work and home will be written? Okay. So what is this? This is managing work and home, is the Indian working woman getting a fair deal? So here, when we talk about, the entire world talks about female labor force participation, how can we expect a meaningful female labor force participation if they have to carry out the dual role, right? So that double role that they have to play, where they have to play the homemaker as well, so that is where the efficiency level comes down. That is where the motivation to carry out the job in a kind of a meaningful way, that also significantly gets impacted, that also comes down. So that is something which needs to be talked about. Okay, so this is where you have to talk about these, and also you have to talk about the unaccounted work, the household. This is unaccounted economic contribution. Economic contribution. Okay, class timings are up till 11. Then after that, you have to talk about the portion of lack of labor force participation because of this. Then also eventually large dropout rates. Due to this, it creates a perception that a woman is not as involved in working at the office because she is taking care of the household, etc. So unequal pay, lack of upward mobility. So in terms of promotion, etc., there is a lack of upward mobility in the professional space. Is the network issue high today? Is that the case? Upward mobility. Okay. Okay, I'll note this point and we will work upon this point. Okay. And then this leads to health issues, health issues which are also there. Okay. And in case of women involved in household work and not being paid, what could be the solution? Yes, Abhishek. So, Anusha, the solution is to change the mindset. That is what this topic is talking about. Change the mindset. Why is it that we only expect the women to take care of the household work? Why can't the men participate in the same? So in majority of the urban areas, thankfully, in many of the urban areas, thankfully, not all the cases, but in few of the cases, you are coming across a scenario where you have the house husbands who basically end up supporting their female counterpart and their wives as they work. They take care of the house as well. They take care of the household as well. So that is where you come across these scenarios. Okay, so that is where you need a support, and they need to be provided with a kind of a support, and that is when the mindset will change. It is a problem of mindset more than anything else. They need recognition of their work. Yes. Unavailability of crash, child care availability at work, uh, lack. Yes, Munna, that is correct. Most of the companies do not want to hire female employees. um, and also many of the companies, they have the patriarchal mindset that hiring female employees will set in motion kind of a lower productivity in terms of the kind of, many of the times, the conflicts that come up, many of the times the issues that are risen up. So that is where you have those kinds of very archaic mindset as well. Maternity leaves, etc. Yes, but now you also have the uh, onset of the paternity leaves, which are also there. Okay, and more work, less pay. That is what unequal pay is talking about. Stereotypes, workplace harassment, significantly major portion. Now here you can quote various different if this comes today, even though this topic will not come now, but if let's suppose this topic comes today, you can always highlight the issues which are very prominent, and after the COVID pandemic, which has indicated that the many of the women, they have opted out of workplace, they have opted out of jobs after the COVID pandemic, right? Now, in our country, working woman is considered to be a prestige issue, and all of you would attest to that fact. Unless and until the girl herself is not ambitious enough, there are very few families who pay attention to giving her the most quality education, right? So it is a, if the prestige issue, what I'm referring to is that if there is enough income in the household, why will the woman need to work? And that is where many of the families and the societies, you will find that they flaunt it up, that in our place we don't have the need for the woman to be working because we have enough income. So working of women is not about income generation. Working woman is not only about income contribution. Working and going for a job also means self fulfillment, it means economic freedom, and that brings about a greater amount of social equity, that brings about a greater amount of participation in decision making process, and that will bring about equality in the society. Otherwise, the woman will always be dependent upon the males of the household for very petty issues as well. So they will never gain meaningful freedom or independence in true sense. So those things you can highlight. Okay. Now, after this, here perspectives of the first question. Perspectives of the first question, here you can talk about the aspect Karnataka government's initiative, Kusina Mane, to provide creche facilities. Yes. One state recently started 1,000 rupees monthly to unpaid houseworking woman. Yeah, you can talk about that as well, but here, yes, you can talk about it. It pretty much, though, comes under the portion of the Gandhian sins. If you would have, I'm sure you would have read about it in the portion of ethics. So it is about paying the houseworking woman. You pay them, you count that as the economic contribution. Whether you are able to pay them or not, that is different. Okay. Now, yes, Hariom, today you are left to my mercy. Okay. So if women rule the world, there you have to talk about creativity, greater participation in the workforce, participation in the workforce. You have to talk about the aspect of less social discrimination, lesser amount of social discrimination. You also have to talk about better conflict resolution, greater political participation, good participation. Okay. A harmonious society, governance standard will change, right? Is that understood? Equality, yes. Is that understood? Rajasthan government started scheme of mobile phones for women. Is it justified? So as long as it is taking the real benefits to the woman, in many of the cases you will find that in the name of empowerment, you have the many of the seats in local government bodies which have been reserved for the women. But what actually happens, what actually does pan out is that you will find that members of their family, they are the real ruling class. You have the panchayat pati system. So if the benefit is actually reaching the woman, so that is done by the kind of opening up of bank accounts only in the name of women, right, of the women members of the family, and then ensuring that what you have said about 1,000 rupees getting deposit that money in her account, right? So that is where you will have a greater role. I'm not saying it will bring equality suddenly. There also mindset needs to change. Many of the times the signatures are forged just to extract the money, and the women members of the family, they don't have enough say. But then slowly and steadily that will bring about greater awareness. Now a girl child, now West Bengal government has done this significantly. The many of the other state governments have done this, where they are providing, even Bihar government had done it earlier, that they are providing cash incentives to girl child when they are crossing a particular level of education. So that is where you can highlight these schemes as well. Okay. Yes, that is also correct. See, for aspect of women's reservation bill, I always say that we had a scenario in our parliament where the speaker was a woman, where the president of the country was a woman, where the leader of opposition was a woman, where the person heading the government, and in fact, the most powerful person in the ruling setup was a woman. So, in spite of all this, if we could not bring the women reservation bill, I don't think that the time will be opportune. And basically, take a look at the statements that our politicians make in the legislative assemblies, in the parliaments, right? Where you have very big and famed politicians, they are able to justify as vile an act as, let's say, a violence against women, rape, voyeurism. They are able to justify it blatantly in front of the entire country, standing in the legislative assemblies and the parliament, saying that this is a kind of a male tendency which will happen. Now if you resort to that, then basically you are justifying all the ills that are present in the society, and you are ready to look the other way. So in that scenario, how can we expect a kind of a change in that, right? So that is the perspective. So I hope you are able to bring that. Now we will move forward with the other topics as well. Before that, we'll take a break. And Shakib, women themselves are more patriarchal, as just they all want all young to marry earlier. So we have held the discussion earlier that, and we have all agreed to the fact that women basically nowadays in many of the societies, women are the propagators of patriarchy. It is, you will find that the women in many of the cases, they want a male child, they have a preference for a male child, right, including the in-laws. And that is where the patriarchy in itself is germinated. Then they would never give their own girls or their own girl child the kind of awareness that a girl requires, the kind of freedom that a girl requires. They set the limitations for their own girl child. So that is where many of the times, led by the social foundations and limitations, patriarchy is promulgated and propagated by women itself. Okay. And second last point, or second last topic, are you talking about, Paya? So second last topic, development is not engendered, it is endangered. So that basically talks about the fact that if you don't ensure the participation of women or girl in the developmental process, that is when the entire developmental process will be derailed, because it will be so lopsided, it will be so very male dominated, and you are basically having 50% of your population not having any say, not having any contribution in the development process. So how long will that development go? It won't be sufficient, right? Women reservation bill, Ajay, is about this is if you will read in governance. So this is a kind of a topic. See, when is it that the question was asked? 2006. So this is a kind of a topic which has been in prominence for couple of decades now, and it is about providing reservation to women in terms of the governmental positions that are there. in the position of governance setup. So reserving certain seats for women candidates, right? So that only women representatives can come out from there. Okay. Yes, that is correct. So Shanavaz, you have a very good report and data that you can highlight. Okay, so let's take a break. It will be so we will be back by 9:35. It is 9:20, is it? So we'll be back by around 9:30, 9:32. Okay, and then we will carry on. Okay. A confirmation about the audio, please. If the audio is clear, thank you. So here, whenever we are or whenever you are asked to apply a source of information or a perspective about, let's say, the discrimination which is being handed out to women in general, or whenever you are asked to talk about women empowerment, so you have to bring the historical perspective that discrimination is not a modern day phenomena. Discrimination has been perpetuated historically. Now, that had not always been the case. You can also bring to light the positive aspects where you had few of the women saints as well, saints and sages as well, and one of the great learners as well. But then that discrimination has been perpetrated historically. Role of women, you have to highlight. So, for example, if women rule the world, so here role of women is something which is quite varied in all the sectors. The problem is that we have a narrow minded mindset where we take a look at only certain sectors out there. So for example, in politics you have many of, even if you consider the modern India itself, that is for the past century, you have many of the women leaders who have shown the way. So from we have already taken the example yesterday as well, from Sarojini Naidu to Sucheta Kriplani to Aruna Asaf Ali. You have many of these women leaders. Then environmental conservation also, you can talk about science and their contribution in terms of scientific and the development of the scientific temperament. So can we take examples of world history or only from no, take the example of the entirety of the world history. Don't restrict yourself to Indian history itself. Okay. Then economy as well. So you had Geeta Gopinath representing one of the highest economic bodies of the world. So there you can talk about in the area and the field of sports also. So for a long period of time, almost in the past decade and a half, almost all the major medals won by India in terms of Olympics were the women representatives that we had. So those varied highlights and those varied contributions, you can bring about the issues, violence against women, and this is at the level of the society, at the level of the family, okay, domestic violence, right, post marital violence, you can talk about marital rape as well here, then unequal pay for equal work, then after that political participation is a piecemeal approach, and this is also largely a kind of a symbolic. Can I give tribal society matriarchal with respect to environment protection? Yes, why not? Um, Shakib, how can we write about women, example, Indira Gandhi or Sudha Murthy in one line? So you can talk about women entrepreneurs and their contribution. So you can talk about, let's suppose, the contribution of women from the role of the political governance to the role of economy to the role of entrepreneurship is aptly highlighted by the likes of the late Prime Minister Mrs. Indira, Srimati Mrs. Indira Gandhi, then Sudha Murthy, Kiran Majumdar Shaw. You can give these highlights in the one sentence itself. Okay. So political participation is largely nominal and symbolic. Okay. In the case of education, also, here they are not given the equal opportunity in order to gain education. Patriarchy is a mindset, and patriarchy is a prevalent setup, be it the workplace, be it the governance, be it the political representation, be it about social justice. Patriarchy does prevail. There are constitutional safeguards which have been brought about. So whenever you are talking about the various things which have been done, which are not being followed, so always apt to bring the constitutional safeguards. So no discrimination on the basis of sex. So that is part of the fundamental rights. Which article deals with this? Let me see your information level for polity. Only Article 15? Good. Manoj, correct. Mrityunjay, correct. It has both 15 and 16. Right. So in fact, the entire set of articles of fundamental right, that is 14, 15, 16, they talk about the equality. Directive principles, they also talk about equal treatment for economic justice and provisions for maternity relief, equal pay for equal work. Fundamental duties, they talk about respecting the dignity of women. Fundamental duties is included in which article? The fundamental duties? 51A. It is not 51, it is 51A. Good. So, electoral reforms which have been brought about by many of the state governments. So, you can highlight that as well. That one-third representation in panchayat and municipalities can be brought about, and the various initiatives in terms of the laws. For example, Domestic Violence Act, Hindu Marriage Act, then initiatives such as National Commission for Women, the National Policy for the Empowerment of Women, the schemes such as Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, the Ujjwala Yojana, which is about bringing a greater level of empowerment to the women as well. The data pointers that need to be collected for this are the female literacy rate, right? The sex ratio, and here take a look at the adult sex ratio, and also the child sex ratio. Okay, so both of them need to be taken a look at. Gender gap reports which are highlighted, and the relevant Supreme Court judgments such as the Visakha judgment that you have. Female labor force participation rate, yes. Relevant judgments. Shabano case, yes. The Vishakha guidelines, okay. So also female labor force participation. Okay. Now, way forward is to provide them with a greater amount of property rights, ensure a greater representation in workforce, political representation, also meaningful political representation, self-help groups, which provides them with a kind of an economic freedom, and thereby ensure participation in decision making process, in decision making process. Okay, only then when they are a part of the decision making process, only when then will come a greater amount of enfranchisement, only then will come a greater amount of involvement. Then armed forces, participation in armed forces, in various services of armed forces. Now participation of women in armed forces is also something which gives a larger message, so larger message to all the young girls out there, that sky is the limit and there is no glass ceiling out there. There is nothing in the world that they cannot do, they cannot achieve, right? So it does not mean that in every portion of the armed forces you necessarily have to deploy women, but there should not be a kind of a glass ceiling. So removal of glass ceiling from participation is very important. Clamping down on violence domestic on outside. Okay. Now, the quotations: to call woman the weaker sex is a libel. It is a crime. It is a man's injustice to woman. If by strength it is meant moral power, then woman is immeasurably man's superior. If non-violence is a law of our being, the future is with woman. This comes with the quotation or the essay topic, What If Women Ruled the World? Women are the largest untapped reservoir of talent in the world. Hillary Clinton. Woman is the companion of man, gifted with equal, if not a greater mental capacity. The difference between a broken community and a thriving one is the presence of women who are valued. Michelle Obama. If you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. That talks about how educating women necessarily, in majority of the cases, that also brings about a greater inculcation of value set. But you have to understand that this value set is not only a domain that women should learn. Value set and morality also significantly is applicable for the male as well. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back. Okay, Malala Yousafzai. What is the meaning of the first quotation? Are you talking about this one, Yogender, or the first quotation that of Mahatma Gandhi? Manoj, no agitation is complete without women. You have had the discussion that has been carried out. You had the model answer, which also has been provided to you, isn't it? So you can take a look at that. This is a part of mainstay series, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Yogender, to call women the weaker sex is a libel, because many of the times when we talk about gender equality, we talk about it that the weaker sex do not have the representation. The weaker sex, they are discriminated upon. So why do we call them a weaker sex? So that is what it is about. So to call women the weaker sex is a libel, means it is something which is a crime if it is a man's injustice to women. So it talks about that women are not the weaker sex out there. They are much stronger by as compared to men when it comes to non-violence, when it comes to moral power, when it comes to aptitude. They are much stronger. So that is what Mahatma Gandhi implied here. Is that understood? Okay. Now, then we can come to the portion of security. But before that, I would take you. So these are the few of the key areas: security, economy, etc. But before that, I would take you to the approaches, or rather, the aspect of how to write the essay. Okay, let's talk about this for a bit. That how to prepare for the essay paper. What are the nuances that you have to keep in mind? Can we write this? Whose writer is not known. Always think you're something. Always think you can do anything. Never think you are nothing. Just think you are something. Yes, this is good. But we still don't have women at the level of commando officer. We have to raise question on selection process. Yes, you can do that. So when we talk about the preparation for essay paper, understand that here we have two topics, two kinds of essay topics that we have been discussing upon. One is the portion of philosophy based topics, and other is the GS based topics. Now, in both of these areas, it is important for you to bring various perspectives which will give relevance to the modern world. Okay, why is it that we have been talking about the perspectives? Few of you have raised question that why do we need to talk about perspective? Can't we simply go about with the explanation of what the given topic is? Please understand, the requirement of providing the perspective is to make it relevant and applicable in the modern world scenario. Okay, in the modern setup. Just a moment. Okay, so perspectives provide relevance to modern world, its applicability in the modern world, applicability of the topic in the modern era. Okay, that is what you need to be highlighting upon. Then, data pointers also will authenticate what you have written. So that is why it is very important for you to gain a proficiency on the GS papers. That is the basic requirement. But you don't have to restrict yourself only to the GS papers. Expand your horizon a bit. Take a look into the current affairs. Now, many of you have pointed out many of the data pointers as well, relevant data pointers. So please ensure. Now, few of you obviously I have taken the example and the name as well, that you have highlighted the various government schemes. So, any state government scheme, any central government scheme, which is relevant for the topic, which can provide a kind of a way forward. So, please bring that into the equation. The central and the state government schemes, when you are providing, you are highlighting that what is being done. You are already providing a kind of an optimistic approach to that, right? If suppose in the case of education we are only talking about the negatives of it, then that always indicates a very pessimistic approach. So when you are able to highlight the government schemes such as MOOC, such as Swayam portal, etc., so you are already enabling or the evaluator to see at the optimistic side of your personality. So that is something which should be the goal. And here perspectives should be taken from GS paper 1 to GS paper 4. The paper of ethics will give you a significant amount of help in expansion of the philosophy based topics, evaluating the meaning of these philosophy based topics. Now, few of the books that you can take a look into, other than the books that already we have had a discussion about earlier, that is Sapiens, Mother. Then for example, let's suppose the book that we have talked, 1984, Animal Farm. All of these books, they will add on to the value. But other than that, you have Shashi Tharoor's Pax Indica, World is Flat, about globalization. Then India After Gandhi, this is something that you should always go through. Okay, you might agree with Ramchandra Guha in many things, you might not agree with Ramchandra Guha in many things, but then please don't include your political biases when it comes to reading a book, that I don't agree with this person, so I won't read their book. That should never be the case. Read the book, because when a book is written, oftentimes it is a kind of a source of information, it is a window that is opened up to you. So this is very good for understanding the social milieu and the political setup and the global pressures that were existent and that do exist in the modern day India. So that is where India After Gandhi is very relevant. An Uncertain Glory in the India and its Contradictions by Jean Drèze and Amartya Sen. So here also it talks about the various different inequalities which are present, and how in these set of inequalities, here you will get many of the case studies as well about the various different inequalities. So whether we will be able to progress with these set of inequalities or not. Then India Unbound, so this is by Gurcharan Das. You'll get all these on Google as well. Yes. Social Problems in India. I'm sure you would be reading this for your GS paper 1. This is by Ram Ahuja. So this is going to help you. Then Good Economics for Hard Times by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo. So this is for the aspect of better understanding of economics and how welfareism is dependent upon the economic output, and welfareism in a way determines what kind of economic progress can be made. Rebooting India, right? So, Rebooting India, basically, here, this is again a very good book for case studies. For example, how is it that digitization significantly has helped women empowerment in many parts? My Experiments with Truth, this is also a kind of a read which will give you anecdotal stories from the life and the experiences of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, again, let me be very clear. I'm not telling you that you have to read all these books. I'm not telling you that. I'm not prescribing you that. Start with one of these books. Anyway, social problems in India is something that you would study for GS paper 1. Study that. India after Gandhi, you can study. This is something which will hardly take you a week at max. So, India after Gandhi, Ramchandra Guha, study this. Okay. And then uh, rebooting India is another one of those. Pax Indica by Shashi Tharoor highlights the problem with international relations that India is facing and the approach that India is taking in order to bolster the international diplomacy and the international relations out there. Okay, and few other books that I have mentioned. Okay, so you have the books that you can study is *Sapiens*. You can study *Animal Farm*. If you want to get historical anecdotes significantly, or you can also talk about Buddha Charita, you can also read that. Then you can talk about or you can also go through uh, in order to understand the various issues faced. So you can take a look at the historical perspective by the series of books that is Mughals by Alex Rutherford. So you can study that as well. Anything, if you want to listen to the audiobook, for example, George Orwell's audiobooks of 1984 and Animal Farm, they are available even on YouTube. If you are able to understand and retain it for a longer period of time, audiobooks also work. It doesn't matter. Okay. Shanavas, I am starting my experiments with truth and contemporary India for social issues. So can I go now with good economics for hard times? I would rather suggest go for India after Gandhi. Okay. For historical anecdotes for the time of Mughals, you can read The Mughals by Alex Rutherford. Or if you want, you can read about Shashi Tharoor, about the deindustrialization and the spread perversion of poverty in India. Shashi Tharoor has also talked about the exploits of the British Empire. You can read Anarchy by William Dalrymple. That is a heavy book, though. So, Anarchy by William Dalrymple. So that is also something you can take a look into. What to read for Mahabharat anecdotes? So you have the Sankshipt Mahabharat also, just like you have Sankshipt Buddha Charit. So you have the Sankshipt Mahabharat also. Um, Rajagopalachari had also written a book on Mahabharat. You can read that also. That is also a very good read overall. Okay. Will reading the summary of these books help, or reading it completely is important? Generally, I would suggest that, see, what approach should be taken is that give some time to reading. Let's say on in a week, if you have 7 days, maybe one fine Sunday morning you allocate, or 2 to 3 hours your own personal time, me time. And there, if you develop the interest of reading books, don't read these books that I will learn all of this. Read these books because you are not aware of many facts. You want to explore the realities of the world. With that perspective, you read the books. Okay, then you will be able to complete the entirety of the book. Because always I say that books are one of the more interesting form as compared to a movie. So books, they give you a kind of a blank canvas in which you can paint your own picture. The movies will show you a narrative. The books will allow you to paint your own narrative. The books will allow you to judge whether the thought process is correct or incorrect. So always go for the book reading in order to attain a greater level of proficiency. Okay. Now, what to extract from the books? Why is it that book reading is important? Should it be done on an everyday basis? No. As of now, I also understand, and it will be absolutely ignorant on my side to ask out of you that every day do one thing, start reading these books at least 4 hours, 3 hours a day. It would be absolutely ignorant on my side, because I understand the pulse and the tensions of time that you are facing, the requirement or the kind of paucity of time that you are faced with and confronted with. So I'm fully aware of that. So whenever you read a book, so look at the writing methodology in the sense that how to pay attention to a particular topic, how to attract the attention of the reader. Because many of the times when you read an editorial, when you read a book, you lose interest within first page or the second page itself. So for example, one of the books of Paulo Coelho is basically The Alchemist, right? And then you have Robin S. Sharma's The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Now both of them are very good books, but they have not been written in such a way to attract the attention of the evaluator all, or attract the attention of the reader all through the way. So how to attract the attention of the reader? Okay, how to attract and retain the attention of evaluator. That is something you need to be focusing upon. Okay, and atomic habits is also very good. Yes, atomic habits is also very good. It spurs you into action, it motivates you into action. Ebooks, it is a personal preference. If you like ebooks, you can always read ebooks. Fair enough, no issues. Then how to go for, how to highlight the points of relevance. That is again something that you will learn from reading the books or reading significant amount of editorials. So the change of points, so you will find that very seamlessly in the case of the books, they are able to navigate from one perspective to another. They are able to bring many different perspectives to the table at the same time. So how are they able to do that? So that change of points, paragraphs and topics that are presented, that you can highlight. Vocabulary, always it will be enriched. That goes true even for the portion of your editorial section and the newspaper reading. Your vocabulary will be enriched. How to enrich the vocabulary, that also we'll talk about. And in both the cases of op-ed section in the newspaper, magazines in the newspaper, and also in the case of the books, you get many case stories. Case stories will authenticate your point of argument, and you will be able to understand that how in the entire book you have 10, 12, 15 chapters out there, but all of them, they paint a larger picture. All of them, they have their own role to show you the larger picture. So that also tells you that when you are writing something, how to consistently ensure that your written paragraph, your written text is aiming at the larger picture. Okay, so that visibility of the larger picture you will get. Sneha, have you read The Secret book? Did you recommend reading it? I have gone through the book, The Secret, and to be very honest, I had a kind of a better expectation out of that book. And I will be very honest with you, very upfront with you. I had a better expectation, but nonetheless, this also talks about the importance of doing activities on your own and how the power lies in yourself for any key activities. So if it is something which provides you motivation, fair enough, you can go through that. And there also you have some of the very good quotations which you can extract from that book as well. If you have read the book, if you have liked it, fair enough. Don't judge the book based upon whether other like it or not. Never judge the book dependent upon that. So when I choose a book to read, I take the reviews, fair enough, but I always one of the ways in which I select which book to read is always take a look at the back page and the what the book is about. And with that, if it is enough to pique my interest, I will read the book. Otherwise, I don't. Okay, and then can we begin with case study as an introduction? Absolutely yes. Why not? So case study as an introduction will provide a kind of an anecdotal introduction. Then you relate it back to the portion of the topic. Okay. Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goldman. Well, you would have studied it for the portion of ethics. So I'm sure that your EI portion for ethics is very strong now. But again, it depends upon your personal opinion for that. It is also a good book. Fair enough. See, if you once you get into the habit of reading, don't restrict yourself to any particular areas. Shanavaz, I have a bad habit of short video in YouTube, so please give me suggestions. Everybody is addicted to those bad habits. Don't worry about that. Reading book has never been by way of entertainment, but I want to develop that. So for that, what I would suggest to you is that, see, if you want to develop that kind of a habit of reading a book and you don't immediately want to immerse yourself into very hard read or a very tough read, what happens is many of you would have observed while reading the My Experiments with Truth, that it is something which is not very relatable in many of the cases. So if you want to keep your aspect of reading the book very close to the preparation as of now, read India After Gandhi. Okay. Or even for that matter, if you want to go for a very light read which is not very heavy, then and if you are interested in politics, as all of us Indians, we are always innately interested in politics. So Rajdeep Sardesai had given a kind of an analysis of the 2014 2019 elections. Any of them, you pick it up. 2014 you would not be so well aware to be able to relate to it. Read about 2019 elections, the analysis that he has given, and it is a very well written book. So read those. Okay, so once you start that, then you find interest, then automatically after that, after India After Gandhi, I would suggest read Rebooting India. This is also a light read, easy to finish. You will be able to finish it in couple of days at max. Okay. And can we mention the name of the book in essay even if we don't know the name of the writer? No, don't do that. So see, Rajdeep is the reporter. Yes, Rajdeep Sardesai is the reporter. Yes. I have never read books. I'm starting from Animal Farm. That will give you then a significant amount of eureka moment. Animal Farm, then Mother. Now, these are not very bulky books. 1984, these are not very bulky books, but these are enough to provoke your thought process to a particular point of way where you have a kind of an overhang of that. So, or rather, better to use the term hangover, where for multiple weeks you will be pondering upon what you have studied, what you have read, and how in everyday aspects of your life that is applicable. So, that is where it is a good book to read. And as a working personnel, I can only devote 6 hours a day, including these live classes. Many of the time, I cannot even attend the live classes. Can you suggest any strategy for this preparation? In that case, ensure that every day those 6 hours is what you count. I'll tell you the case of one of the candidates that I have had a very close in terms of the bond as he was preparing. So I'll tell you the ethics. It is the work ethics and discipline which defines a candidate's journey. So that individual, what he would do is he would sit deliberately at the time, at a predefined time after office hours. And every time that his attention would veer off, or he would immediately stand up and move away from the study table, because many of us, we have the habit of sitting in front of the book and thinking about it, that we are opening up an NCRT and we are thinking, once I become an IS officer, that person who was very rude to me, I will tell him what it means. I will never even talk to him. Or better, if I become an IPS officer, I'll do one thing, I will do plan a raid on their house and then they will learn. So our mind tends to veer off after a long tired day. That is very natural. So what can be done is, I'm just telling you as a kind of a measure. You can have your own strategy. So what that individual had this practice of, that any of the time that he found out that he could not pay attention for more than 5 minutes or so, that his attention was veering off, he would immediately stand up, move away from the table, and start the stopwatch. And he would start the stopwatch, and that would give him an account of how every day, even the time after office, how much time is getting wasted, how much time is utilized, right? He did manage to qualify for the civil services twice. In the first attempt, he got a rank of around 370. In the second attempt, he got a rank of within top 100, and he secured foreign services. So it is the work ethic. And he did this while working. So it is the work ethic. Okay, develop that work ethic. And then to enhance philosophical understanding. For philosophical understanding, see, all these books, they are going to give you a lot of perspectives. For philosophical understanding, you can take a look at The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, a good book to understand. The Secret, as one of your friends have told, right? So these are the books that you can always take a look into. Okay, right? I hope that is understood. Now, how to improve the vocabulary? This is a major pain point, a major point of concern, that how to improve the vocabulary overall. Can we start preparation from now for 2024? It is absolutely a must. You have to start the preparation immediately for 2024. It is high time that you started the preparation for 2024. Okay. Kindly tell the name of essay book. Deepti, let me ask you what you are seeking. Let me ask you if I'm correct or not. Are you seeking a particular book which will give you an idea of all the essay topics which you will be able to answer perfectly in the examination without going through all these tough work of reading the books and the newspapers? Are you seeking the name of that book? Tell me if I am correct or if I am wrong. Are you seeking the name of that book which will help you understand all the essays type of questions which are asked, what to be written in that, and also how to write those answers and develop your perspectives? Is that the book that you're seeking? So that book doesn't exist. Let me be very upfront and honest. That book doesn't exist. You don't have a particular guide out there that you read this book, you will be master of essay. If that would have been the case, everybody would have followed the same book. If that would have been the case, the toppers would not have minted money by writing their own books. For practice, I would suggest to you that for practice, always take a look into the portion of the PYQs. Develop your brainstorming skill with the PYQs, right? Ikigai is also good. Ikigai is also a good book. You Can Win by Shiv Khera is not, uh, that is a book that many of them recommend. But I find that book a kind of something which delves upon the fact of your intellectual immaturity to a bit. So You Can Win by Shiv Khera is, if you like that book, fair enough, go for it. And but Ikigai is good. So, for example, I'll tell you one essay book you had preferred uh, in the first or second lecture, only for the essay. Okay, if I recall it, I'll let you know, Deepti. Okay, but always I would suggest that develop your level of understanding. There are so many things that start floating in the mind. So that is what I'm telling you. Whenever your mind veers off, stand up, move away from the study table, start the stopwatch. That will give you an idea. Okay, that when I'm sitting at the, and it will also develop a habit, that whenever you will, it habit develops after 14 to 21 days. So after that, once you sit again, that is when you will always develop a habit that whenever you are sitting on the table, automatically the mind will start to focus. So move away from the book, close the book. Any point of time after 5 minutes you realize that you have not been paying attention, try it once again. If again it is not happening, stand away, do something else, come back after 5 minutes again, come back after 10 minutes, take a break, come back after 15 minutes, half an hour, and then start working upon it again. Okay. By selecting the topic and using bar and chat gpt will be useful, like reading essays, getting idea about the essay. Yes, why not? Okay. So first of all, let us concentrate on how to improve the vocabulary, the need to improve the vocabulary. So vocabulary is important. Why? You need not have a kind of a Shashi Tharoorian type of English out there where even the evaluator is bound to open up a dictionary. That is not required. That is not the requirement of this examination. So here, the vocabulary helps you express your opinion in the most concise way. Vocabulary helps you convey the exact meaning in a very precise and a direct manner. That is why good vocabulary is always very enriching, very rewarding. And good vocabulary comes with practice, right? In many of the areas you will find in our country, and again, coming back to the education system, you'll find people who have rectified the dictionary. They have rote learned the entire dictionary. Ask them to speak two lines in a communicative English, they will start faltering, they will start stammering. So vocabulary is not an ornament that you keep in your almirahs and in the decorative chambers of your house. No, vocabulary is something which you use frequently. So first of all, many of the times it would have happened that you read, open up the Hindu newspaper, you find a particular issue, or you find a particular word that you have not understood the meaning of it, you find a usage of an idiom which you are not comfortable with. So first thing that needs to be done is understanding the meaning. Understand the meaning. What is the meaning of that particular uh, term or a phrase? Right. Now, it need not be done immediately. It need not be done that, okay, here I have found a difficult word. Immediately, I'll take a look at that. I will note it down and then I will move. If you follow that approach, you will never be able to read through. You will not be able to finish the article. You will never be able to finish the entire page itself. So, many of the times, the entire sentence and the paragraph, that is also sufficient to convey the meaning that it holds. So, understanding the meaning is very important. And then its application, its importance and utility in adding meaning to the sentence. Okay? Utility in adding meaning to the sentence. So, where is that vocabulary absolutely relevant to add that meaning, or is it simply of an ornamental value? If it is simply for an ornamental value, I will ignore it. If it adds meaning to the sentence, it becomes relevant for me. Okay? So, where is it used? What is the form of its usage? Usability in a sentence. Once you have understood that, then repeat it by reading it again and then use it in your own communicative language. Always advisable to develop a communicative English. Never advisable unless and until you are preparing for an exam like GMAT or a GRE. Just developing your grammar doesn't help significantly. Okay, so communicative English is something which is very important. How you are able to communicate. So, any of your friends, your siblings, your colleagues, where you can have some conversation in English, do that, because that is what will bring about fluency. More importantly, you will learn where to use the connectors, is, are, am, all these connectors. Many of you, while you are writing the English, there is a significant lack of that. So that is what brings about a significant amount of hesitancy even while you start to communicate and you want to express your opinion, but you are unable to do so. You feel the urge to bring the other language into that, right? So that is something which you should not practice. It is something which works in real day life, but not in the sense of creating a good impression in the mindset of the evaluator. So use it on your own. Use it on your own. Be regular with it, and be regular. It should not be that I have come across a new word today, I learned about the usability today, and then I leave it out and I expect myself to retain it 1.5 years down the line. That will never happen. Unless and until you continue to use it, it will erode away. Okay, so continue to use it, right? But don't ever overemphasize on one word that you have learned. Don't try to show off one particular word that you have learned. Okay, because it becomes very apparent. I have given you the example of one very fine answer copy that we came across, and all of us faculty members, we did take a look at that answer copy because I showed them how interesting it was. And that candidate had come across a term that is dungeon, right? And I give this example quite often. So that dungeon example, so basically dungeon is a meaning of or is a term which is used for underground cells, underground prisons, which were used earlier in order to house the hardened convicts of that point of time. And that candidate had come up. Now how do we know that that candidate had recently learned that word? Is because in that entire essay, or I think it was a long answer. I think it was an essay. That candidate had used it at least 20 to 50 times, right? We cannot let our thought process be trapped in a dungeon. If we do this, then the humanity will in itself be like being trapped in a dungeon. Then we need to get rid of that dungeon of thoughts around ourselves. So don't try to show it off. It becomes very apparent. Okay, never try to show it off, and always use the words only where they are applicable. Don't frame a sentence based on that word, that I have to use this word so the entire sentence revolves around it. No, even if you write your essay in the very basic language, more than sufficient. Okay. Yes, it was one of those, Shanavas. I don't exactly recall the answer, but I recall um, the kind of a good laugh that everybody had as a result of that. And will using such words in our answers help us to bring them in usage? Yes, Alok, why not? Niker, even if I learn new words, I forget to apply that. So that is because of the lack of practice, the lack of repetition. Sometimes we have various meanings to the same word and it becomes ambiguous to understand. So for that, that is why I want you to understand the utility. Where is it that it is being used in the sentence? Why is it being used in that sentence? That is where you need to understand. Okay. I write down the vocab words I get from editorial, but there are so many words that I'm not able to go back to revise. So it should be a daily exercise. Okay. Daily exercise. Yes, Ziba. So that is why I'm telling you it is not necessary to go for a very ornamental language. It should be able to convey the meaning. If you are able to convey the meaning, some of the best essays that I have encountered is with the simplest of the words being used. No tough words being used. But then their grammatical errors, they don't have a place. No grammatical errors should be done in that. Okay. Snehilata, you have shown one copy on essay. He or she has very good handwriting and very good vocabulary structured answer. Uh, so with that comes with practice. I am able to read only one newspaper a day. How many newspapers do you want to read? One is more than sufficient. As of now, up till the level of your mains examination, one newspaper is sufficient. After you get through the mains examination, then read multiple newspapers. Till that point of time, only one newspaper. Any of these newspapers, Select any of these. If you are bored in your life, if you want some masala in your life, some entertainment in your life, you are always free to explore newspapers such as Times of India and the Bombay Times, Gurgaon Times, Bangalore Times. All these, they will add much amount of entertainment in your life. But other than that, restrict yourself to these. This will provide relevance to your preparation as well. And the magazines, so I understand many of us, we don't have enough time to read the magazines. So Yojana and Kurukshetra, you would be covering with the help of the gist, and all the topics being covered in the webinars, they would be covering Yojana and Kurukshetra significantly. And is Indian Express sufficient? Absolutely yes. Okay. Down to earth is something I highly recommend, because nowadays this is something which will help you in prelims, also mains, and this is also where you get case studies. Case studies. Now, many of them will suggest to you that Frontline as another magazine. Frontline as another magazine, but Frontline is nothing but a kind of a gist of the Hindu itself. So if you are reading the Hindu, no point of reading Frontline, and it is a kind of a heavy magazine, bulky magazine. So take your pick. And then, by the way, I would always recommend you, whether you are interested in economics or not, go through the economic survey. Okay, make it a habit to go through the economic survey. Economic survey provides you, I understand that the best phase of economic survey was when you had Arvind Subramaniam writing it. So you had some of the best economic surveys which were written, very easy to read, very easy to understand. But even now, the economic surveys, they will give you an insightful data pointers from all the different areas. Okay, be it agriculture, economy, then education, everywhere. So economic survey is also something you can read. Okay, and EPW is one of those magazines where you will find a deeper in-depth analysis of the topics articles, and again, one of the hard reads. So if you don't have time, you can ignore these, but these are the areas that you should be focusing upon. Okay. uh, is it that Yojana and Kurukshetra cover yearly news? They are monthly magazines. This is about the rural sector, rural development. And this is about the government scheme, its lacunae, its importance. This also talks about the government schemes. Okay. So, Yojana and Kurukshetra, anyways, you can refer to the gist. You can also refer to the aspect of the webinar sessions. Payal, I am not able to find the webinar session. Where can I get it? So you can get it on the portal itself. You can do one thing. If you are finding it difficult, write a mail to us at IS Life. We will get that. And GNY is must for geography optional. If you are taking geography optional, yes, go for GNY. But GNY has become very irregular now. Okay. Excuse me. How many months current affairs are needed or necessary? Roughly around 12 to 18 months of current affairs. Okay. So overall, gist of Yojana and Kurukshetra is are covered in monthly magazine. Yes. Okay, Shanavaz, I'll take a look into it. I think you have sent a mail, right? So I'll take a look into it. I take weekly webinars regularly. Is it mandatory to read magazine still? So Anjali, ask yourself very honestly. The webinars that you have taken, let's say in the month of July, do you remember the entirety of the details of those webinars till now? And will you be able to retain all that text and all that content, let's say 1 year down the line? So there will be some difficulty. So monthly magazines provide you with a kind of a yardstick to carry out the process of revision. Okay. So overall, what you need to do is, for the preparation, keep track of the general trend of news, to bring forward the current trends, the current developments. That is very much required. Current trends and development. Okay, that needs to be highlighted. The data pointers reports, so that is where you have to maintain a factoid section. This will also help you in answer writing. So data pointers and reports. Okay, the quotations you can extract from the newspapers, books, write it down somewhere. Summarization is needed. Okay, understanding the quotation is required. Merely learning the quotation is not important. Understanding the relevance, because it can happen that Mahatma Gandhi's quotation can be applicable in multiple different areas. So understanding that quotation and practice being concise. What you are thinking, are you able to represent it in your writing or not? And whatever practice that you have to do for the essay, practice through the pyqs. Pyqs will form a very good amount of yardstick. So, for example, practice the certain topics of the PYQs. So, here, these are certain topics of the PYQs I have listed here so that you can brainstorm in this. Any issue that you face at any point of time in forming a kind of an opinion about this, in developing the perspective of this, or in expanding these topics, always feel free to get in touch. Okay, these are few of the topics overall. Now, here there are certain essay approaches for the 2022 question paper. So this is the written portion of the model answer that I will also provide to you, that will also be given to you. So here I just want you to think for a brief moment about these topics. And what webinar Byju's provide? The current affairs webinars. Are you not aware about, how many of us are not aware that webinars are conducted? I see many of you are having a doubt in that, whether webinars are conducted or not. So weekly webinars are conducted on Tuesday and Thursday. So one talks about the weekly current affairs, other talks about the monthly current affairs. So you can always attend it. Okay. Then Yogender, is monthly magazine not sufficient because it is difficult to manage time to read newspaper? If you are restricting the utility of newspaper to current affairs, monthly magazine are more than sufficient. The timings of the webinar is from 8:30 to 10:30. Okay. Yes, Hariom, I'll take a look into it. Now, here, poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. What do we understand by this topic? And what do you think can be written in this topic? Creativity. Okay. Is it necessary to take printouts of PPTs? Absolutely not. Don't do that. Impact of poet on the society, subjective knowledge. Yes, Manoj, they are sufficient. Talks about the social injustice happening and reforms needed. And poets' wider perspective to see the world. Poets are not legislators, but their writings impact like legislators. Okay. So here the keywords are poets and unacknowledged legislators. Okay. So here, when you think about these keywords, so what do the poets do? They bring about a line of thought. Many of the times, they are able to bring about a kind of a revolution in mindset. They change the opinion of the society. So they are opinion makers, makers, instruments of change, voice against injustice, attention, bring attention to the ills of the society. Okay, right? They are pave the way for future thoughts, induces the society to reflect. Practical thinkers, yes. Amar Shonar Bangla during the freedom struggle, yes. Modern thinking, okay. So that is the work of the poets. Now, why are they referred to as the unacknowledged legislators? There, you have to talk about the work of the legislators, not what the legislators of present day are doing, but what is the work of the legislators to make society a better place, to create a better place in the society, right? To create a better living condition, to get rid of all the social ills. Now they are unacknowledged because many of the times these poets, what they take, what they say, what they foresee, that is something that the world realizes long after they have gone, and also due credit is not paid to them. So let us take a look at very what you can do in order to frame the essay from here. So any anecdote, etc. So this is basically a quotation which was made by Shelley in an essay which he had written, that is a defense of poetry. So here he talked about why poetry is relevant and why it is important. So humanity is inspired by poetry, just as Shelley said. Poets are mirrors or huge shadows that the future casts upon the present. Then it is poetry that bears the future and inspires minds. It beholds the past and mirrors the present, and they are society's quite revolutionaries. Actually, all the great writers, not just the poets, they end up instigating that point of view and that thought process which can carry the society forward. They are both the moral critiques and the force that propels the society forward. They actively engage in society rather than just being the mute spectators. They observe the minutest of the ills. So, here, what is the duty of legislators? Understanding the spirit of the existing laws, represent the interest of their constituencies, reflect the opinions and values. All of this work is done by the poets. Yes, Manoj, that can be given, that can be talked about. Now, why poets are unacknowledged legislators? It creates public opinion, patriotism, ideas and thoughts are propagated, religious scriptures oftentimes are interpreted, and the people, it is made more accessible to the people as well. Moral values and the importance of morality is given by them. Political revolution, voice to the voiceless, endless amount of voiceless that you have, economic changes, social transformation, everything is brought. Why is it that they are acknowledged? Their role in the progression is not something which is publicly recognized, right? Underestimated contribution to the development of society. Poets and writers face ire of the ruling classes, and they have been facing this for a large part of the history as well. So that is how you can basically talk about it, that pen is mightier than the sword, etc. All these can be highlighted. Then history is a series of victories won by the scientific man over the romantic man. What do we understand by the topic? Just the understanding and the model answers will guide you. History is a series of victories won by the scientific man. Here, when we talk about it, scientific man needs to be elaborated, romantic man needs to be elaborated. Romantic man here talks about belief in utopian ideal scenario. This talks about scientific temperament. How it is important to develop scientific temperament, and with scientific temperament comes rationality. Good. So rational behavior has always won over the idealistic approaches. But here you have a scope to contradict this topic as well. Here you have the scope to contradict in the sense that you can talk about that how the ideals, the viewpoints, the ideas set by the romantic man has paved the way for their achievement by the scientific man. Okay, so for example, it was not the scientific man or the scientific nature which instigated the promulgation of democratic setup, right? So it was the romantic man who thought about it, of a kind of a society where everybody has got a voice, where nobody is oppressed at all, right? Rabindranath Tagore, when he says, where the mind is without fear, where the head is held high, where the walls, or where the narrow domestic walls have not fragmented our thoughts. So that is where he is very romantic in that point. But then it is eventually rationality which will take us towards the attainment of that goal. Okay? Yes, sometimes ideas running the scientific man, right? So here, anecdote or any of the quotation that you can think. So you can use the example of how Socrates and Galileo were not recognized in the society they were living in and got punished, but now they are revered for their scientific temper and rationality. In the Indian context, how social evil practices such as sati, child marriages, were glorified. That was very much the romantic ideal. But then eventually sati and the entire concept of sati was driven behind the romantics of the husband wife relationship, that if the husband dies, what will the wife do surviving thereafter. So that is where it was a very kind of a romantic ideal which did not fit the test of time, test of humanity itself. So it was the scientific fervor which basically proved and brought an end to it. However, scientific men like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, they fought against the evils. Okay. Now, here, history is defined as the mother of all subjects. It means rest of the subjects are derived from the events, and rest of the learnings that we get are driven from the events of history. It provides analysis and interpretation of the human past that enables us to study continuity and changes. Hence, history can be used to arrive at the various patterns, trends, and learnings. So, thereby divide the essay into sections: that who is a scientific man, who is a romantic man, more inclined towards norms and notions of society, who believes, here as per the reflection of the quotation, emotional, idealistic, and far away from rationality. What influences a man to become scientific or rational? So culture and society, the background, the awareness level, the education standard, need and necessity, economic and financial resources, all of these, they basically. Okay, how many of us have not understood the meaning of this, even after the model answer? And be very fair and honest. Don't worry about it. If you have not understood, not understood. Okay. So there, What this particular essay topic talks about is history is a series of victories won by the scientific man over the romantic man. It indicates that history is filled with instances, and history is a series of victories means what dominates or describes our history. That is a series of there you will find series of instances which all indicate that throughout the history the scientific man here refers to that rationalistic ideas, scientific temperament, they have always in the long run prevailed over the idealistic conditions, over the romantic notions of a particular reality, over a kind of a utopian idea that we will have this kind of a society, that kind of a society. It is always the real world scientific temperament and rationality which has won, and history is the evidence of that. Is that understood? Or is there any doubt which still prevails? If it prevails, be honest enough. Ask it again. Is it clear? See, I don't want you to keep those lingering doubts after you leave the session. Okay? So here, when you are creating an essay out of this, so in this case, you have to talk about the various evidences which indicate that indeed the scientific man has won over the romantic man. And here, that is what we are talking about, that you have to first of all talk about it, that what do we mean by scientific man? Do we mean a scientist by this? No. By romantic man, do we mean Shah Rukh Khan out of here? No, we mean the representation of ideals here. So, scientific man here refers to basically scientific fervor, rationality of thoughts, the way in you, the way in which you can discern the right from the wrong, right? So, here, when we say about or when we talk about romantic man, so one who lives in idealism. Yes, Ashanavas, rational men such as Socrates, Aristotle, Buddha, all of them. Yes, the last prophet. Yes, all of them. So basically, idealism, where world is utopian. Okay, all of this you can highlight here. All of this. So here you first of all need to expand upon it. So again I will get back to it. So you can highlight the anecdotes that how there are evidences of the victory of the scientific man over the romantic ideals. What does it mean to learn from the history and the events of the history? You can provide multiple anecdotes here. What do we understand by the scientific man here? What do we understand by romantic? Can we mention Krishna's thoughts here? Why not? Absolutely, yes. If it is relevant to the topic, if you are careful and sensitive enough when you are highlighting it, why not? So, who is a romantic man? So, a man who believes or a kind of a belief in emotional, idealistic way and away from rationality. What influences an individual to become scientific or rational or romantic in their lives? So, it is many of the times their exposure to the society, their worldview, how they are viewing the world, all that influences this. Okay, then why scientific man win over the romantic man? More action oriented. Then a scientific man does the cost benefit analysis, does the deciphering whether the action will be correct or incorrect, open to feedback, right attitude to learn from mistakes, draws a logical conclusion, tries to maintain a track of the progress, and who has a clear cut roadmap of how to get things done, right? So here, Gandhiji for a while advocated non-violence and behaved like a romantic man here, but be very careful. But to achieve his goals, he used scientific methods he devised, such as satyagraha and non-cooperation. So he behaved like a scientific man here. Oscar Schindler, you would have seen the much acclaimed movie Schindler's List. So Oscar Schindler can be an example. Abraham Lincoln, he is closely associated with the ideals of equality and action against racism, right? So he used a scientific path in advocating emancipation of slaves and proclamation of abolition of slavery. So, however, they are not mutually exclusive, they exist together. Here, you also have the scope to contradict this particular point of view. Okay, always remember that you also have enough scope to contradict this point of view, to talk about that how not always it is a series of victory, because oftentimes the romantic man sets upon a roadmap which is followed by generations of scientific men later. Okay, so here in the conclusion, you, as always, you have to talk about the importance of being the mixture or the middle path, being a kind of a perfect conglomeration or a perfect mixture of both of them. So there's a romantic man inside every scientific man who is inclined to certain ideals and truth which they believe in. Okay, so that is how you can conclude. Nagraj, very good. Can we give example of Muhammad Shah, Rangila, Jahangir versus Sirajuddaula, Hyder Ali, Tipu? Yes, but don't give example of Sirajuddaula in the case of Battle of Plassey. Otherwise, you can give. Can we mention the ruler of Vijayanagar Empire? Yes, you can. Can I use John Locke as a contradict example because he was more orthodox and rational in his politics? You can. You can definitely. See, automatically, I'm significantly, I need to tell you that the level of points that you are bringing in, the thought processes that you are bringing in, that in itself is very nice. Good to see. Is it necessary to read the standard books or is it sufficient PPT and the classes? For revision, always go through the standard books. Okay? Because that will help you in solving MCQs. Mamala Usuf, you mean Malala Yousafzai? Yes, Malala Yousafzai you can quote. Okay? This is something that we have already discussed, right? So this is something that we have discussed. You cannot step into the same river twice. So I hope we won't face any difficulty in this. Here is a model written essay for this. Okay, finding joy in simple things. So that is the aspect. And then in philosophical essay, how can I believe that whatever I have interpreted from the quotation is correct? Because one quotation seems having different meaning. This will come from practice, my dear friend. More number of quotations that you come across, you will get into the habit of having a correct interpretation, okay, or a more accurate interpretation. So that is why always go through as many quotations and quotes as possible. Yes, Emperor Akbar was also rational. In the ancient India flourished with all those romantic ideas. But in ancient India, Aluk, you also had a significant amount of scientific fervor. Aryabhat, ideal example. Sushrut, Charak, ideal examples. Okay. Um, Elephant Whisperer story, you can also write yes. Okay. A smile is a chosen vehicle for all the ambiguities. So, what is the meaning of this? Yes, Karan. Here you can take the example of in the earlier one, the Prithviraj Chauhan and Mohammad Ghori. Yes. Alok, I'm pursuing economic honors from Delhi University, preparing it as my optional subject on my own if I send the answers. So just ask if we have the and inquire through the mentorship if we have. See, there is no point getting your economics optional paper evaluated by some random people here. So ask from the mentorship if they do have, or if as of now we do have the presence of those people who can provide you with relevant insights, and then why not do send it. Hariom, in philosophical essay, I am unable to understand the meaning by myself. So, in that case, do one thing. Never look at the entire topic in completion. Break that topic into multiple smaller parts and then understand each and every word of it. Okay. So, here, Alok, no, sir, they don't have. I already. So, let me talk to Shyam, sir. Let me see if we can do something. Okay. So, A smile is the chosen vehicle for all the ambiguities. Ambiguities means what? A kind of an indecisiveness, a kind of where you are not conveying your entire perception or what you exactly want to convey. You are ambiguous, right? So you don't want to convey your inner feeling. So a smile is a chosen vehicle which will not offend anyone, which will still bring about a harmonious coexistence despite having the difference of opinion, difference of thought process. Okay, so that is the aspect of it. So here, learn to smile at every situation. See it as an opportunity to prove your strength, because that smile will put a better perception for others as well. If you don't do nothing, then be happy because you'll not die. Yes, Shanavas, that is perfect, right? Pleasant gesture, a smiling face, and soft words have the power to drag people down. Yes, perfect. So now you are able to understand all of these. So I will consider it as an accomplishment for all of us. And Shakib, I'm not good in GSSA, not able to put data. So maintain the factoid section, my dear friend. Do it for a week, for 4 to 6 weeks. You will automatically see the result of it. Can we write any Arabic quote of the smile essay with the meaning? Absolutely, yes. Why not? As long as you interpret it or you write the relevance of that in justifying the answer. Why not? Laughter is the best medicine or is the only medicine. Yes. Can we relate the smile with pacifism? That is one of the ways to look at it. Why not? Why not? Absolutely. Okay. So I hope you will be able to gather this. I hope you will be able to write about it. So here I have in this PPT given you multiple different such quotations. Try to think about it, guys. And please don't think that it is important for you to write an essay every week. That is not required. But as of now, because you have had the essay classes just now, at least for a month, I would advise you that every week at least take a look at 2 to 3 such topics. Don't write the entire essay if not required. Write only the portion of the introduction if required, but definitely go for the brainstorming. What is it that you can expand there? What is it that you can write there? Okay, do that. And do that homework exercise at least for a month. That confidence level will be so very important, it will carry you through. And always remember why you need this essay paper. You need this essay paper wherever there is an ambiguity, whether you are getting through the mains or not. Good marks in essay gets you through. Whenever you are not sure how you have performed in the examination, essay paper performance can get you a good rank. If let's suppose your optional is a bit punishing and your optional always gives you a kind of a mediocrity of marks of around 260, 270, 280, essay paper will counter that, will get your rank in double digits. Realize this importance. Pay attention to inferring. Essay is nothing but about expressing what you have understood, what your thought process is, what your way of thinking is for any particular given sentence, how you can bring that to life in the modern day world. Okay, so do that. And any issues that you face, we are always there to help you out. You have my mail ID. Feel free to get in touch. Okay, and rating of this batch, as far as the input and the ideas are concerned, I will definitely give you. But yes, some of the questions have stumped me quite significantly, so I'll keep the rating to somewhere around 4.8. But that is good. Okay. And yes, baby, that is the correct English alphabetical arrangement that you have written. So it starts with A and it ends with Z. Okay. So that is where we'll end the session. Akula, can we write PPTs in notes and take printout? You can. Why not? You can. I was just asking, referring that to save paper. But if you want to take printout, fair enough. So do that, and please be in touch for any issues that you face, any kind of difficulty that you have with in understanding of any of those. You can have a simple mail that please help me understand the meaning of this. That in itself would be sufficient. If not myself directly, in case of paucity of time, I will definitely help a mentor reach out to you, help you out in the process. We will ensure that this is a smooth process for you. Okay, so please do take a practice of this. At least brainstorming is something which you should absolutely take a look at. So that will be all from my side. Hope that these sessions of 6 modules, they have been productive enough for you till we get a chance to meet again somewhere or the other. So basically, all the best for your preparation. And please, again, as I say in every session, don't get overburdened by the syllabus, don't get overburdened by the requirement. Everybody faces the same issue, the same pressures, parental pressure, societal pressure. Everybody goes through that. So just ensure you have the best productive day on that particular day. Just ensure that. And always remember, it is just another job and for just another exam for that job. So lower that elevated prestige that you have set for civil services, lower it a bit. There is no reason why you can't achieve it. So till we meet again, all the best. Take care of yourself. Do relax. Be motivated. Goodbye. Thank you.